Chapter 76. That's right, at this moment, Rowling has made up his mind to do something. After all, the after-school time at Hogwarts is too boring and monotonous, and it is really beyond his ability to do it alone. Therefore, finding some reliable helpers has become a top priority. With the participation of brothers George and Fred, it will surely be more efficient. After lunch, Rowling took a short rest and went to the dormitory where the twin brothers lived. When he arrived at the dormitory common area, he saw George and Fred fully armed and ready to go, wearing the iconic Quidditch uniforms. In an instant, a thought flashed through Rowling's mind, oh no! How could I have forgotten about this? George and Fred are also members of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. In regret, Rowling couldn't help but raise his hand and pat his forehead. At this moment, George caught a glimpse of Rowling's figure, and a look of joy immediately appeared on his face. He shouted loudly, "Hey! Rowling, why are you here?" Fred on the side also echoed. "That's right, Rowling. We've been looking forward to working with you ever since you left the burrow." His words were full of excitement and anticipation. Faced with their enthusiastic attitude, Rowling smiled and responded, "That's right, George, Fred. I came here today to keep the appointment. But looking at you like this, are you going to participate in Quidditch training? I wonder if I can go with you." Although he said so, Rowling secretly thought in his heart, "I'm afraid that this training will not go as I wish." "Of course," said Fred and George in unison. "Slytherin, why are you here at this Quidditch field? You should know that I have already registered the venue for today." The Gryffindor captain looked surprised, his eyes full of anger. However, facing the questioning, the Slytherins did not show any fear. The captain of Slytherin responded loudly, "Don't be angry, we have the professor's permission." His words revealed an indescribable confidence and arrogance. He also handed over a letter of permission. "I, Snape, grant the Slytherin team the right to use the Quidditch pitch today for the purpose of training their new seeker." Hearing this, the angry people suddenly quieted down and focused their attention on the so-called new seeker. At this moment, Malfoy walked out slowly from the back of the crowd at the right time. "Malfoy?" Harry asked with wide eyes and a suspicious look on his face. Obviously, he was very surprised by this sudden appearance of his opponent. Malfoy's mouth corners raised slightly, revealing a smug smile, then he puffed out his chest and said proudly, "Yes, it's me. It seems that the broom in your hand is no longer the newest one here." As he spoke, he glanced at Harry with contempt. "That's Nimbus 2001. Ron asked in disbelief, his mouth wide open. "How did you get this?" Facing Ron's question, Malfoy had a disdainful look on his face and replied lightly, "This was bought by my father. Every Slytherin has one. As for Weasley, it's just a small amount of money for my father." After that, he deliberately shook the shining light energy 2001 in his hand, as if showing off his superiority to everyone. Humph, at least the Gryffindor team members were selected based on their real abilities. They didn't get in by using despicable means like money. Hermione Granger made no effort to hide her contempt and ridicule for the other party, her tone full of disdain. However, in the face of Hermione's sharp words, Malfoy did not show weakness. He straightened his chest, raised his head, and responded in an extremely arrogant and slightly angry tone, "No one cares what you, a dirty, lowly mudblood, think." This sentence was like a sharp sword, piercing Hermione's self-esteem. Hearing this, Hermione was so angry that she was shaking all over, but she still suppressed her anger and stared at Malfoy with wide eyes. "You must be responsible for what you just said, Malfoy." At the same time, Ron on the side could no longer suppress his anger. He quickly took out his wand from his arms and prepared to recite a powerful spell, wanting to teach Malfoy a severe lesson. But at this moment, an accident happened. The damaged wand in Ron's hand suddenly lost control, and not only did it fail to cast magic as expected, but it suddenly bounced back to Ron himself. Then, a jaw-dropping scene appeared. Ron's mouth began to spew out sticky slugs. These disgusting bugs instantly covered the entire ground, causing people around to cover their noses and avoid them. At this moment, Rowling, who was standing at the entrance of the Quidditch field, witnessed all this from afar. He thought to himself, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger are really overestimating their own abilities and meddling in other people's business. Thinking of this, Rowling couldn't help but shook his head. Seeing Ron making a fool of himself, Hermione Granger rushed forward to help, waving her wand to try to stop the spread of the slugs. However, the magic of the wand did not seem to work well. "Wow, can you turn it around?" Colin appeared from nowhere and just happened to capture Ron spitting out the slug. "No, get out of the way," Harry said a little irritably. "It seems that this little guy has been pestering Harry." Haha, Rowling thought to himself. "Let's take him to see Hagrid, he must know what to do." Harry gave a clever idea. Looking at the backs of the Gryffindor Big Three walking away, Rowling slowly moved to the side of George and Fred. He didn't want to get involved in the dispute between the two colleges. It was really inexplicable. At this moment, Draco's familiar and slightly boastful voice reached Rowling's ears. "Hey! Rowling, why are you here? Look, this is the Nimbus 2001 my dad bought for me, it's so cool. If you like it, I'll ask my dad to buy you another one." Draco's face was filled with pride and joy that he could not hide when he said this. Rowling smiled and responded politely, "That's really great, Draco. But I really don't have the slightest interest in flying brooms. I always feel that riding one will make me feel uncomfortable and my butt will hurt. Congratulations on becoming a seeker. I'm here to find George Fred." Then, the Gryffindor captain announced, "Today's training is over. Everyone, go home." There was a hint of displeasure in his words. Then, Rowling turned his gaze to George and Fred and said softly, "In this way, it seems that we can spare some time to discuss my idea. It's just puzzling why Harry didn't take Ron to the school infirmary or seek help from the professor. Ron's current condition is obviously a bit bad. Who knows? Let's go, Rowling, how about coming to my dormitory? There are a lot of our research and development results in there." Fred George said excitedly. "Certainly." Chapter 77. Sound Wave. Rowling entered the dormitory of the Weasley twins. As soon as he entered the room, he found that it was completely different from the four-person room where Harry Potter lived. There were only 2 beds in the entire space. Looking around, he saw all kinds of objects of different shapes and shapes piled together randomly, and even some mysterious magic materials from the Forbidden Forest were mixed in. "Well, Rowling, please find a seat. We can't wait to hear your ideas." Fred greeted Rowling warmly, with curiosity gleaming in his eyes. Rowling smiled and nodded, then slowly walked to the bed and sat down, saying, "I took advantage of the holiday last year to travel around the Muggle world and saw many amazing new things. Have you heard of television?" Hearing this question, George immediately became excited and rushed to answer, "Of course I know, Rowling. My father works in the Muggle Articles Disposal Department. One day, when he came home from get off work, he brought back a strange thing called a TV. However, this thing seems to require a special thing to start, but we have been thinking about it for a long time and still can't figure out how to do it." Llewellyn couldn't help but feel helpless. He widened his eyes and asked, "Didn't you even turn on the power? Power supply? What the hell is that? Do these Muggle gadgets actually need electricity?" George's face was full of confusion, as if he was completely unfamiliar with this concept. Looking at these two friends who knew nothing about modern technology, Rowling couldn't help rolling his eyes, secretly sighing in his heart that the polarization between the Wizarding world and the Muggle world was too great. As long as it is powered on, it will be like a magical mirror that can display all kinds of strange and bizarre pictures. Rowling explained to everyone enthusiastically, his eyes flashing with excitement, as if he had already seen the infinite possibilities brought about by this wonderful invention. He continued, "I suddenly had a novel idea. If we can use the mysterious and beautiful crystal ball as a medium to carry these wonderful images, and cleverly combine it with some powerful magic circles with imaging functions, and then connect it with common sites as convenient and efficient as the Flu network. I call it the Internet. Then, we just need to put the video we carefully created in it. In this way, we can definitely earn a lot of gold galleons. You know, traditional magic books can only be presented to wizards in the form of monotonous and boring text, which makes wizards feel bored. However, if we can successfully transform the content of the book into vivid video material and display it through the unique crystal ball we created, there is no doubt that this will become an innovative highlight with great appeal and huge commercial value." Hearing this, Fred and George couldn't help but look at each other, their faces filled with irrepressible excitement, and they shouted in unison, "Wow! This is simply an incomparable and wonderful idea." It seemed as if the entire wizarding world would become shining because of this amazing concept. Of course, my idea is far more than that. We can definitely engrave communication runes on its surface. You know, the delivery of letters in the current magical world all relies on owls, but this method is not only extremely slow, but also will cause huge losses if it is intercepted by wizards halfway. Then, Luo Lin looked at the two of them firmly and continued, I urgently need your alchemical talents. At the same time, I also need some capable helpers. So I sincerely invite you to join me. I can invest a full 10,000 gold galleons as the cost in the initial stage. If there is a profit after the success, I can give each of you 10% of the profit as a reward. Even if it fails in the end, you will not suffer any loss. If you agree, we will sign the contract. After saying that, Rowling stared at the Weasleys solemnly. 10,000 gold galleons. Oh my god, Rowling, you are so rich. We would be extremely happy. To be honest, we have never seen such a huge wealth in our lives. You know, even our father's monthly salary is only 100 gold galleons. George was so surprised that he was incoherent. However, Rowling, we are facing an extremely difficult problem. There are no formations that can present images and runes for communication in the current magic field. George narrated these words with a frustrated look. My father once told us that decades ago in the German magic world, there was a powerful wizard named Grindelwald who successfully displayed his amazing prophecy with the help of a mysterious smoke. It's a pity that he is the only one who can accomplish such a feat. Fred added. Hearing this, Rowling quickly drew out the magic wand in his hand without hesitation and lightly tapped the air. In an instant, a gorgeous rainbow suddenly appeared. Rowling skillfully used magic to subdivide the rainbow into 7 bright and colorful colors. Then, he specially selected 3 unique tones of red, green, and blue and showed them to George and Fred. As Rowling's wand continued to dance, the 3 colors seemed to be given life, blending and separating from each other. They were like a group of smart elves. Under the guidance of Rowling's superb skills, they gradually evolved from the original 3 primary colors into dozens of colorful colors. In the end, Rowling was like an excellent weaver in nature, and with his extraordinary skills, he brought these gorgeous colors together into the lifelike faces of George and Fred. At this moment, George and Fred were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what they saw, even though these scenes were vividly presented in front of them. Based on the principle of the existing magic camera in the wizarding world, you need to learn from another product of Muggles, the camera. Make a magic camera so that these magic items will not be eroded by the magic of the wizarding world. Next, the wand in Rowling's hand showed no sign of stopping. He pressed the tip of the wand, which was shining with mysterious light, against his throat, opened his lips slightly, and began to speak. With every word Rowling uttered, something amazing happened. His voice was sometimes high-pitched, sometimes low, and sometimes loud, as if it was controlled by an invisible hand. This is the amplification spell. Rowling continued to release magic power. At the same time, an even more magical scene appeared before George and Fred's eyes. Waves of magic power like ripples spread out from Rowling's position to the surroundings. Then, Rowling smiled and explained, "This is the sound wave." After that, he slowly put away the magic wand against his throat and raised it high. Chapter 78. What was shocking was that the magic sound waves that were just rippling in the air suddenly appeared at the top of the wand again as if summoned. What surprised George and Fred even more was that at this moment, Rowling had clearly closed his mouth and stopped talking, but the words he had just said were still clearly audible in the air. George and Fred looked on in disbelief. It was as if an invisible shock wave had hit them, throwing their minds into chaos. Their originally firm beliefs in magic were now like fragile glass, instantly shattered into countless pieces and scattered all over the floor. Meanwhile, Luo Lin, who was standing by, was becoming more and more satisfied with what was happening. The corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a barely perceptible smile. This was exactly the effect he had been pursuing, shocking and unforgettable. Then, Luo Lin quickly concentrated his mind and gathered the magic power in his body into the magic wand in his hand. As the magic power continued to be injected, the magic wand began to emit light. At the same time, a sound wave shot out from the tip of the magic wand like a surging wave. Let the sound waves gather together and add the amplification spell. This sound wave was like an extremely sharp sword, rushing straight towards the inconspicuous flower pot in the corner. With an extremely piercing loud noise, the flower pot was instantly blown into pieces. However, for George and Fred, what really made them feel miserable was not the explosion, but the sharp and piercing sound that followed. This sound was more torturous than any torture in the world. It directly penetrated their eardrums and went deep into their brains, making their heads buzz as if thousands of bees were scurrying around inside. George and Fred subconsciously stretched out their hands and covered their ears tightly, but even so, the annoying buzzing sound still lingered and kept echoing in their minds. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was just in a moment of inspiration." Llewellyn scratched his head awkwardly, his face full of apology. But in fact, he was secretly delighted in his heart. After all, this unexpected attempt actually successfully gave birth to a new spell, supersonic spell. Not only does it have good power, but it also comes with sonic interference. After a while, George and Fred tried hard to figure out what Rowling meant by those words, but their faces were still full of confusion. Rowling saw all this and immediately understood it in his heart. It felt like asking a person from a primitive society to step into the 21st century all at once. It seemed that only by letting them personally come into contact with and experience it could they truly understand and master the mysteries. "Okay, George and Fred, I know you still have a lot of questions in your minds. So, do you still remember the first-year student Colin Creevy?" Rowling asked. "Of course I remember, Rowling. The magical spell you performed in the auditorium at that time is still deeply imprinted in our minds today. And that little wizard was Colin." George answered without hesitation. "That's right, George. The camera in Colin's hand is a magic camera. All the pictures published in the Daily Prophet were taken with a camera like this. So, I think you should first understand the principle that this magic camera uses to take pictures." Rowling narrated slowly. "Then let's go find Colin now," George Fred said impatiently. "Don't panic. Listen to me. As far as I know, inside the mysterious Hogwarts castle, there is such a wonderful place, the Room of Requirement. It can sense the deepest desires of little wizards and turn them into reality. I believe you have heard of it." Rowling said slowly, with curiosity and anticipation flashing in his eyes. "Yes, Rowling, this legend has indeed been passed down by word of mouth among successive young wizards. However, to this day, almost no one knows exactly where it is. Some young wizards even assert that the so-called Room of Requirement is nothing more than an elaborate scam. Fred and I once tried to search for its traces on the Magical Marauders map, but in the end we found nothing. Oh, by the way, Rowling, do you know the Marauders map? This is a precious treasure we accidentally found in Filch's messy storage room. It is a magical map that can clearly show all the secret passages in the castle and the activities of the little wizards." George talked about his personal experience incessantly, and his excitement was hard to hide in his words. "Of course, it is indeed a magical map. However, as for the specific location of the Room of Requirement, I seem to have some clues. We can go there and concentrate on our invention work," Rowling announced confidently. "Wow, this is amazing. It's really unexpected. Then without further ado, let's head to the Room of Requirement right away." Upon hearing this, the Weasley twins danced with excitement, and couldn't wait to unveil the mystery of this mysterious room. At this time, Llewellyn passed through the spiral staircase and came to the opposite side of a tapestry of a giant beating a fool with a stick on the 8th floor of the castle. Llewellyn concentrated his attention and imagined the research room where he wanted to study magic cameras. After walking through that section of the wall 3 times, a very smooth door suddenly appeared on the wall. "This is simply unbelievable." The Weasley twins widened their eyes and looked at the scene in astonishment. "In that case, let's go in and take a look," Rowling said as he stretched out his hand and pushed open the door. Instantly, a mysterious atmosphere came over him. The room was filled with all kinds of magic cameras, some of which were huge and heavy, others were small and exquisite, just like the latest products in the magic world. These cameras covered a wide range of types from traditional to cutting edge, which was dazzling. "Fred and George, it's up to you to study them on your own. There is a detailed explanation of the principle next to each camera. The focus of your research this time is on how to take pictures and display images. If you still don't understand the mystery, I suggest you go to the Muggle world and buy a camera and study it carefully. Unfortunately, once the things made by Muggles are brought into the magic world, they will be eroded by magic power and become dilapidated. Just now, I tried to turn on a new magic camera, but found that it still uses the oldest film mode. So, my task is to create a new information recording chip. Use magic to engrave the circuit on the crystal in a dot engraving way, and when the magic is input, it can present an image. Roland explained seriously. Chapter 79. The secret room is opened. Leave it to us, Professor Rowling. The Weasley brothers shouted at the same time. Haha, okay. Then let us join hands and work together, dear classmates. Llewellyn also joked. At this moment, Fred and George could not wait to start playing with those mysterious cameras. They read the detailed manuals beside each camera with great concentration, and from time to time they could not help but exclaim in amazement at some amazing discoveries. At the same time, Llewellyn devoted all his energy to the research and development of new information recovery chips. After repeated and unremitting attempts, Fred and George finally succeeded in figuring out the correct way to use the camera. Llewellyn also watched them and secretly sighed in his heart. As expected, young people's ability to accept new things is indeed beyond imagination. On the other hand, Llewellyn himself has also achieved remarkable results in the laboratory. The information playback chip he carefully developed is gradually becoming perfect, and now only the crucial final round of testing is left. George, Fred, I think we should go enjoy a delicious dinner. Rowling said as he slowly walked out of the room of requirement holding the crystal chip. However, the moment he stepped out of the door, the chip in his hand suddenly disappeared. Rowling suddenly realized, as if waking up from a dream, as long as he left the room of requirement, all the items displayed in the room would immediately disappear, only the objects brought in from the outside world could survive. George and Fred also caught this situation with their sharp eyes. After looking at each other, they said in unison, "It seems that we have to find a way to get some crystals first, and then make some careful modifications to the magic camera." After that, the two of them walked towards the auditorium together. After entering the hall, Rowling walked straight to the long table where Gryffindor was. He saw Ron and Hermione happily enjoying a sumptuous dinner together, but to his surprise, he did not see any trace of Harry. So Rowling could not help but ask, "Ron, why aren't you with Harry?" Hearing someone calling his name, Ron looked up. When he saw that it was Rowling, he smiled and replied, "Hey, it's you, Rowling. We were really unlucky this afternoon. Something went wrong when I cast the spell, and I kept spitting out disgusting slugs from my mouth. Because of the flying car incident, we were all punished to work in the professor's office after class, and I was responsible for cleaning the trophy display room. Harry, I guess he should still be in Professor Lockhart's office now," Ron said, spreading his hands helplessly. After listening to Ron's narration, Llewellyn couldn't help but fall into deep thought. He secretly thought that according to the current situation, the mysterious secret room might have been opened. Then a series of horrifying petrification incidents began to unfold one after another. As if to confirm his inner guess, at this moment, Harry suddenly heard a very strange voice. Rowling also subconsciously cast his eyes towards Ginny Weasley, who was sitting next to Ron. "Rowling, Hermione and I are going to look for Harry. It's already very late, but he hasn't had dinner yet." "That's natural." Ron and Hermione hurriedly left the hall and walked quickly towards Professor Lockhart's office. However, just as they passed a corner, they were stunned by the scene in front of them. They saw Harry clinging to the wall like a nervous person, seemingly listening to something attentively. "Hey, Harry!" Ron couldn't help shouting. "Didn't you hear that sound?" Harry Potter turned around and asked nervously. "What sound?" "We didn't hear anything at all," Ron replied suspiciously. "I just heard a strange noise in Lockhart's office, and then I heard it again here, and this noise seemed to be moving. I think it might hurt someone or even kill someone," Harry Potter said in a firm tone, then he turned around and ran away. "Murder? Harry, wait a minute. Don't run so fast," Hermione shouted anxiously. Not long after, Harry finally stopped and stared at the wall in front of him. He saw spiders lined up in a neat row and fleeing the castle at an astonishing speed. "That's very strange, I've never seen a spider behave like that before," muttered Harry, looking confused. Suddenly, Harry inadvertently glanced at the mirror-like water surface, and the image reflected in it made him shudder instantly. Lines of shocking bright red words appeared on the wall. "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened, enemies of the air beware." Could it be, is this written in blood? Hermione Granger's eyes widened, her face full of disbelief, her voice trembling slightly with shock. "Oh my God!" Harry Potter couldn't help but exclaimed, as if he couldn't believe what he saw. At the same time, his eyes were firmly attracted to the petrified cat hanging on the wall. "Is this Filch's cat? Mrs. Norris?" Harry muttered to himself as he slowly walked towards Mrs. Norris, each step seeming extremely heavy. At this moment, the dinner was over, and a large group of young wizards filed out of the spacious hall happily. However, the moment they stepped out of the hall, they were stunned by the scene they saw. Harry Potter was standing quietly in front of the scarlet text, and a cat was lying beside him, whose life or death was unknown. Colin was in the crowd, preparing to raise his camera to record this strange scene, but his action was stopped by Llewellyn, who was standing beside him. Llewellyn also happened to be here, and he knew very well that a terrible panic was about to sweep over. "Enemy of the heir, you better be careful. The next one to suffer might be you, a filthy mudblood." Malfoy stared at Hermione Granger with a mocking look on his face, not hiding his contempt. "What are you doing here? Get out of my way!" An angry shout suddenly rang out. Chapter 80. Harry is wronged. The Administrator Filch suddenly appeared in front of everyone like a ghost. Surprisingly, he was no longer sloppy and unkempt, but dressed in a neat and decent uniform. He even looked more unique. When Filch's eyes swept over Harry Potter, who was surrounded by the crowd, his face instantly became extremely gloomy, and he asked sternly, "What on earth are you doing, Mr. Potter?" Then, as if he had noticed something unusual, Filch turned his head sharply to the side, and when his eyes fell on Mrs. Norris, who had been petrified, the angry expression on his face instantly froze. Instead, there was an expression of disbelief and fear. Without hesitation, he quickly drew out his wand and pointed it directly at Harry Potter, his voice trembling with extreme shock. You actually killed my cat." Faced with Filch's accusations, Harry Potter seemed panicked. He shook his head desperately and explained anxiously, "It's not like that, it really wasn't me." But at this moment, the facts were before their eyes, and no one could believe his words. Filch's eyes widened with anger burning in them. He gnashed his teeth and roared, "Don't quibble! I will kill you, the hateful murderer, with my own hands." At this moment, Harry Potter's eyes caught a glimpse of Rowling standing in the crowd. He looked at Rowling with a very aggrieved look, as if he had grabbed the last straw, and hoped that the other party would stand up and help him wash away this unjust accusation. Rowling, who had been watching all this as a bystander, suddenly met Harry Potter's eyes. At that moment, the noise around him gradually faded away. Harry's big, crystal-clear sapphire eyes were covered with a thin layer of mist. He stared at Rowling intently, as if he was telling his grievances. Rowling knew it was his turn to take action, so he stepped out of the crowded crowd. "Mr. Filch, please be patient. I think there may be some misunderstanding here. I can clearly feel that Mrs. Norris is not dead. I can sense her weak but still beating vitality. In my opinion, it is more like it has been petrified by some kind of magic, but Mr. Potter would never cast such a profound spell as the petrification spell," Rowling said at a moderate speed and firmly. Filch's tense body trembled slightly, and when he heard Rowling's words, he slowly loosened his grip on Harry's collar. He slowly turned around and his eyes fell on Rowling standing behind him. At this moment, the raging anger in Filch's heart gradually subsided, replaced by an indescribable feeling of awe. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Rowling, I was rude. In fact, I should have noticed your arrival and extended my warmest greetings to you." Filch lowered his head and said in an extremely humble tone. At this moment, the little wizards who witnessed the whole incident were all shocked. They stared with their eyes wide open, as if they couldn't believe what was happening before their eyes. Especially Harry and Ron, they were so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths. Was this really the usually grumpy Filch? However, in the face of Filch's humble attitude, Rowling just smiled and responded softly, "Mr. Filch, you don't have to be like this. As for the previous incident, I didn't take it to heart at all." At this moment, Dumbledore and a group of professors walked out of the room and came to this place. Their eyes were instantly attracted by the shocking bright red on the wall, and their originally amiable faces suddenly became serious and cold. Dumbledore shouted loudly, "Everyone return to your own dormitory immediately, and do not go out without permission." After hearing this, Harry Potter, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger turned around without hesitation and prepared to leave. However, just as they raised their feet, they clearly heard the next sentence Dumbledore said. "Except you three." Before he finished speaking, Lockhart appeared from nowhere and shouted with regret, "Oh, what a pity. If I had been there, I could definitely save this crisis." After saying that, he did not forget to put on a pretentious attitude. The professors around him all turned their eyes to Lockhart, their eyes full of contempt and disdain, as if they were looking at a funny clown. Faced with such strange looks from everyone, Lockhart also realized that his behavior was a bit inappropriate, so he tactfully shut his mouth. At this time, Dumbledore continued, although we don't know how Mrs. Norris was petrified, fortunately, the mandrake that Professor Sprout carefully cultivated is about to grow. When they are fully mature, they can be made into an effective antidote, so that Mrs. Norris can be restored to her original state. However, in the meantime, I urge you to remain highly vigilant and not take it lightly. After saying this, Dumbledore waved his hand to signal Harry and others to leave first. Just as Llewellyn was about to return to his dormitory, suddenly, a strange and mysterious magical fluctuation emerged without any warning. This feeling was so strong that Llewellyn stopped instantly, and all the nerves in his body were tense. At the same time, Xiao Ke, who had been quietly staying in Llewellyn's pocket, seemed to sense some danger and suddenly flew out. Its small and exquisite body hovered in the air, watching the surroundings vigilantly. Rowling stared at the distance outside Hogwarts Castle with his eyes wide open, with a look of astonishment on his face. He took a deep breath and said in an extremely firm tone, This is the scent of the Clow cards. There is no mistake. It seems that he has an innate sense of familiarity with this scent. Then, Llewellyn followed Xiao Ke without hesitation to the outside of the castle. They looked up at the night sky, but found that the beautiful scene of the original bright and twinkling stars had disappeared. The entire night sky was covered by dense and heavy clouds, becoming as dark as ink, like an endless abyss. Oh no! This is the work of the Yunkuro card. Xiao Ke's voice was filled with anxiety. He frowned and shouted, Llewellyn, we must stop it as soon as possible. If we let it go on like this, the entire sky will be completely covered. It will be very difficult to seal it again then. Hearing Xiao Ke's words, Llewellyn's heart tightened, and he finally realized the seriousness of the situation. He knew that if the power of the Yunkulo card could not be contained in time, then from now on, people would never be able to see the warm and bright sun and the bright and soft moonlight again. Without any hesitation, Llewellyn quickly grasped the magic wand in his hand, which symbolized the power of the seal, and then jumped up and flew up. He was seen muttering, Elf with the power of wind, please obey my call, disperse the clouds gathered in the sky, and let the starry sky appear again. Before he finished speaking, he threw the wind clow card in his hand towards the clouds. In an instant, a dazzling light flashed, accompanied by a gust of wind. A huge and majestic magic circle appeared out of thin air in the air. Wind spirits emerged from it, turning into a hurricane, stirring up violent storms, and mercilessly attacking the thick clouds. The clouds were blown away in a moment, and at this moment, what was exposed in front of Rowling was the cloud bound by the wind elf. Rowling successfully sealed it and returned to the Gryffindor common room. Chapter 81. The Sound of the Bathroom. Rowling had just stepped into the Gryffindor common room when his eyes were instantly drawn to Harry, Ron, and Hermione, who were sitting there quietly, as if waiting. Their expressions were serious, and they kept looking towards the door. Rowling, you're finally back. We went to your dormitory to look for you, but the door was closed and no one answered, so we had to wait here. Harry stood up impatiently and went to greet Rowling. Rowling frowned slightly, feeling a little confused. What's going on, Harry? You are looking for me so anxiously, is there something important? As he spoke, he slowly walked to the sofa and sat down, ready to listen to what Harry was going to say next. Harry took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down, and then began to narrate the bizarre experience. Thank you for trusting me just now. Actually, what happened just now? I really don't know how to describe it. Not long ago, I suddenly heard a strange sound that others could not detect. The sound seemed to come from a faraway place, but it was clearly transmitted to my ears. Out of curiosity, I walked in the direction of the sound, and I saw a large group of spiders fleeing the castle in a hurry. Then, I witnessed the shocking scene before. To be honest, I am still very uneasy. Rowling, you are knowledgeable, can you help me solve this mystery? Harry told the whole story in detail, hoping to get some answers or suggestions from his friend. Rowling thought to himself, I believe it. I believe it too much. But he remained calm on the surface and continued to answer Harry Potter's questions. Harry, you're welcome. We are good friends. I definitely believe you. As for the strange sound you mentioned, to be honest, I can't give you a definite answer. But those spiders fled in a hurry, probably because there was something that made them afraid. Speaking of the appearance of this secret room, I once heard a rumor. It is said that there is an extremely terrifying monster imprisoned in it, and every time the secret room is opened, it will break free and escape. Then it will wantonly harm those Muggle-born wizards, so, Draco did not lie to you. At this point, Rowling suddenly stopped talking, as if deliberately leaving some vague but clearly visible clues. After all, only in this way can their intelligence and talents be truly trained. If everything is revealed, wouldn't it turn them into a group of reckless lions who only know how to rush around? Okay, thank you very much, Rowling, Harry responded gratefully. Then I'll go back first. Good night and sweet dreams to everyone. After saying this with a smile, Llewellyn turned and left. Looking at Rowling's receding figure, Ron asserted firmly, "It looks like Rowling doesn't want to participate in our exploration of the secret room." That's it, good night Harry, Ron, I think I'll go to the library to look up some information tomorrow. Hermione Granger said softly, her intelligent eyes revealing firmness and determination. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked away lightly, leaving Harry and Ron looking at her back. Let's go back to the dormitory, Harry. Ron patted Harry's shoulder, and the two walked towards the dormitory together. In the following time, Llewellyn has been concentrating on the research and development and production of the magic recording chip. His eyes are focused and ardent, as if the whole world is only the invention in front of him. During this period of time, he has devoted almost all his energy to this, constantly exploring the wonderful field of the combination of magic and technology. At this time, the naughty twin brothers George and Fred went to the Muggle world as planned and studied the principle of the camera used by Muggles. With their innate curiosity and creativity, after some efforts, they not only successfully mastered the relevant knowledge, but also put it into practice, using the recording chip as the storage of the camera and magic as the energy. Finally, they created a unique camera in the magic world. At this moment, the room seemed particularly quiet, with only Llewellyn busying himself. He was carving the crystal ball, which was the core of the magic internet. Once the carving was completed, it could be connected to the branch terminal system to be sold in the future. Thus, it could play content just like a Muggle TV. However, the silence did not last long. Soon after, George and Fred came into the house excitedly, their faces full of excitement. Hey, Rowling! I have big news for you. Harry broke his arm in today's Quidditch match. George shouted to Rowling impatiently. Hearing this news, Rowling was shocked and his mind came back to reality in an instant. He remembered the house elf Dobby. It was all Dobby's fault. Thinking of this, he decided to go visit Harry immediately. At this moment, the Hogwarts castle, shrouded in the night, stood quietly like a huge and mysterious fortress. Rowling hurriedly walked out of the room of requirement on the 8th floor. Just as he stepped onto the spiral staircase leading downstairs, he caught a glimpse of a dark shadow moving stealthily not far ahead. Who is that? Could it be? Rowling's heart tightened, he slowed down his pace, and approached the shadow carefully. When he got closer, he found that it was the little devil who sneaked out of Gryffindor Tower for a night stroll, Colin Creevey. Good evening, Colin. Rowling said softly. Oh. It's you, Rowling. I was so scared, I thought it was the castle manager. Colin patted his chest, looking frightened. Haha, Colin, why are you hanging out here at this time? You know, it's late at night and Hogwarts is not very safe right now. Rowling asked with a hint of sarcasm. If nothing unexpected happens, the first person to be petrified by the basilisk will be this little guy in front of you. It looks like the basilisk will show up tonight. Thinking of this, Llewellyn quickly used his magic perception ability, trying to perceive the subtle changes in the surrounding magic power by the surrounding magic power fluctuations instead of the naked eye. Since he captured 3 Clow cards of the 4 elements, not only did his magic properties of water, fire, and wind improve. Moreover, Llewellyn was extremely sensitive to the changes in the surrounding magic power, and he couldn't look directly into the eyes of the basilisk. I just heard someone in the Gryffindor common room say that Harry was sick and in the hospital, so I rushed to the school infirmary to visit him. Colin responded quickly. I see. It just so happens that I am planning to go visit Harry as well. In that case, let's go together. Okay, let's hurry up and get there. Luo Lin nodded slightly to show his agreement, and then the two of them walked quickly side by side towards the school infirmary. Along the way, Luo Lin never dared to let his guard down. He paid close attention to every move around him. Just as they were about to arrive at the school clinic, a piercing cold wind suddenly hit them without warning. The cold air blew past them, causing them to shiver uncontrollably. Luo Lin's heart suddenly tightened, and an ominous premonition surged into his heart like a tide. At this moment, there was a rustling sound from the bathroom in front, as if something was approaching. Luo Lin quickly reached out and grabbed Colin, who was about to take a photo with his camera, and signaled him to stop. Chapter 82. Scared away. Luo Lin took a deep breath, concentrated his mind, and slowly opened his mysterious and powerful elemental eye. When he looked towards the bathroom, the scene in front of him shocked him. The originally calm space suddenly burst into a strange light, and countless tiny lines of magical energy intertwined like a spider web, instantly appearing in his field of vision. Through the seemingly solid wall of the bathroom, Rolling clearly saw a terrifying giant snake-like energy struggling to drill out from the narrow pipe. Its huge body exudes a terrifying aura, as if it could break through the wall at any time and bring endless disasters to the entire campus. Luo Lin's heart sank, and he secretly cried out, "Not good." He knew the seriousness of the situation very well. If they couldn't stop this terrible snake monster in time, none of them would be able to escape. So, without hesitation, he quickly closed the Eye of Elements and tightly closed his own eyes, trying his best to mobilize the surging magic power in his body, trying to sense every trace of magic fluctuation in the surrounding environment. At the same time, Rolling anxiously shouted to Colin beside him, "Little Colin, hurry back to the Gryffindor dormitory. The monster in the Chamber of Secrets has come out. You must leave here immediately, the farther the better." After hearing this, Colin's face turned pale as paper, and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. However, despite his fear, he did not choose to retreat and run away. Instead, he grabbed Luo Lin's sleeve tightly and said in a trembling voice, "Luo Lin, come with me quickly. Let's go to find the professor for help." Luo Lin looked at Colin's determined eyes and was moved. But he knew that time was running out and he couldn't afford to delay any longer. He shook Colin's hand away and shouted, "There's no time. Go. Believe me, I have a way to deal with this situation." In fact, at this moment, Luo Lin himself felt a little nervous. After all, facing such a powerful and ancient snake monster, even someone like him with good magical attainments dared not take it lightly. However, with the accumulation of 2.5 years of training, plus his precise control of his own magic power, Luo Lin was confident that even if he could not kill the snake monster, he could at least escape unscathed. Of course, if it came to the last resort, he might use his most powerful spell, the Forbidden Blazing Spell, at all costs, but the building might be completely destroyed. At that moment, Rolling keenly sensed an evil and powerful aura surging. His heart tightened and he immediately realized that the basilisk was about to appear. Without hesitation, he shouted to Colin beside him, "We must not let its eyes see us." Before he finished speaking, Rolling's figure flashed, and in the blink of an eye he turned into a dazzling lightning, rushing straight towards the basilisk that had slowly poked its head out of the bathroom like an extremely powerful king of thunder and lightning. At this moment, Luo Lin closed his eyes tightly, concentrating on mobilizing the surging magic power in his body. In an instant, countless winding lightning snakes gathered on his arms like a smart dragon. With the extraordinary speed advantage of lightning, Luo Lin used his unique skill, Thunder Plow Hot Knife. This move was like a thunderbolt, hitting the hideous head of the basilisk fiercely. This is Luo Lin's groundbreaking creation in the field of magic, inspired by the iconic skills of the Thunder Shadow in Naruto. By perfectly integrating his own unmatched body with the violent and raging power of thunder and lightning, he formed an indestructible thunder and lightning coat, thus giving the enemy a fatal physical blow. In an instant, the severely injured basilisk let out a shrill scream and was knocked back several meters. It was obviously dizzy and at a loss for what to do after being hit by this sudden attack. It muttered to itself, "I just popped up, what on earth is flying towards me?" However, Luo Lin knew that speed was of the essence in war, and he was determined to seize the opportunity to pursue the basilisk and not give it any chance to catch its breath. Suddenly, purple energy rose up from his body, radiating light like a dazzling purple sun, illuminating the entire corridor as bright as day. At the same time, the magic power in Rolling's body was being consumed rapidly at an unprecedented rate, but he did not flinch. He resolutely gathered all his strength, summoned a giant bolt of lightning, and struck the basilisk with devastating power. Faced with this terrifying energy, the basilisk finally felt the approach of death. It was terrified and turned around without hesitation to dive into the sewer, fleeing in a panic and disappearing without a trace. Finally, the dust settled, and Luo Lin breathed a sigh of relief. He carefully felt the magic power in his body that had been consumed by half. The attack just now almost exhausted all the energy in Luo Lin's body. When Rolling used the thunder plow and hot knife, he immediately realized the terrifying defensive power contained in the indestructible snake scales on the snake monster in front of him. If he had not been in this carefully designed script-killing scene, Rolling would never have believed that Harry Potter could defeat such a ferocious basilisk with his bare hands with only his insignificant magic power. As expected, the so-called Son of Luck is really different. At this moment, Colin was curled up in a secluded corner, staring at Luo Lin, who was showing his power with wide eyes. There was a blazing light flashing in his eyes, as if countless bright stars were jumping in them. Obviously, Luo Lin had become his new object of worship. Rolling slowly restrained the violent lightning power surrounding his body, and then seemingly casually glanced at the corner inside the bathroom. In fact, as early as when he used the Eye of Elements, Rolling had already noticed that there was a figure hiding there. Yes, that person was Ginny Weasley, but to be more precise, she was just a puppet controlled by Tom Riddle. Rolling turned away without going forward to expose her. The basilisk said that Rolling had beaten it away, but it was better to say that it was scared away. Rolling knew that the basilisk was not hurt. To confront Tom Riddle like this would undoubtedly be a fight to the death. Colin, you'd better leave as soon as possible. It's too dangerous outside. That terrifying basilisk might come back at any time. At the same time, I hope you can keep secret what happened just now to avoid unnecessary panic. Rolling said seriously. Okay, Rolling. I will. Colin knew the situation was critical. He quickly put away the camera that he had just secretly taken a photo of Rolling, then turned around and ran away without hesitation. Out of consideration for his own safety, Luo Lin used his shadow to conceal his body. He blended into the endless darkness like a ghost, moving silently towards the infirmary. When Luo Lin arrived at the door of the infirmary, a low but clear conversation came into his ears. Chapter 83. Strange Talent. Hello, Harry. A slightly sharp voice sounded. Dobby. Harry almost cried out in surprise. Harry Potter, you should have listened to Dobby's advice. Since you failed to catch the train to Hogwarts, you should have gone back home obediently. Dobby's tone was full of anxiety and worry. So it was you who blocked the wall, preventing Ron and I from passing through. Harry couldn't help but ask angrily. Yes, sir, Dobby admitted readily. You damned guy, you almost got Ron and I expelled from school. Harry became more and more angry. But at least this can ensure that you stay away from this place. Harry Potter, you must return home. Dobby originally thought that as long as he caused the riot of the Blood Jars, he would be able to make you, Harry Potter, wake up completely. Dobby continued to chatter on and on. Blurred ball? It was you who ordered that damn bludger to chase me. Harry asked angrily with his eyes wide open. Dobby felt extremely sad and painful, sir. Dobby had no choice but to burn his hands with a hot iron. Dobby sobbed as he slowly stretched out his hands wrapped in thick bandages for Harry to see. However, facing the pitiful Dobby, Harry showed no mercy. You'd better leave here immediately before my bones heal, otherwise don't blame me for being rude to you. I might really beat you up. He clenched his fists, his tone firm and cold. Dobby seemed to be used to it and didn't care about such threats. Dobby has long been accustomed to the fear of facing death, sir. In Dobby's house, we suffer at least 5 such threats every day. Oh? Really? Then I'd like to hear why you are so obsessed with murdering me. Harry raised his eyebrows, with a hint of doubt in his eyes. No, sir, this is not to harm you, absolutely not. Dobby clearly remembers what the world was like before Harry Potter successfully defeated the terrible devil who dared not even mention his name. At that time, we house elves were like pests that everyone hated and beat, with no status at all, sir. Even now, Dobby is still regarded as a pest. At this point, Dobby became more and more emotional, his voice became hoarse and unpleasant, and finally he couldn't help but cover his face and burst into tears. What are you wearing? Harry asked puzzled. That's it. Don't you know? This is the unique identity symbol of our house elf slaves. Only when the master rewards me with clothes, will I have the chance to regain my freedom. Dobby explained with a rebellious look. At this time, Rowling, who was hiding outside the door and eavesdropping, thought to himself, so that's it. Dobby must think that Harry Potter has successfully defeated Voldemort, allowing all wizards to enjoy freedom. Then he also has the hope of helping those house elf slaves break free from their bondage. Well, this should be what Dobby really thinks deep down in his heart. So, Rowling slowly walked towards Harry's bed, while Dobby in the room was still whispering with Harry. Dobby lowered his voice and said, Hogwarts is about to face an extremely terrible disaster. I'm afraid that dark history will happen again. At this moment, without any warning, Rowling suddenly removed his shadow disguise, and then with lightning speed, he slapped Dobby hard with a loud slap. This sudden attack directly hit Dobby like a kite with a broken string, flying straight towards the wall next to him and hitting it hard. Then, Rowling said calmly, this is a punishment for you daring to hurt my friend Harry. Dobby was totally unprepared for someone to suddenly appear and attack so ruthlessly, and was immediately frightened out of his wits. In the blink of an eye, it cast a spell and disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. Interesting. I didn't expect that Hogwarts has an anti-apparition spell, but this guy Dobby can successfully perform apparition. Rowling secretly exclaimed in his heart. He didn't dare to neglect it, and immediately cast the Eye of Elements to carefully observe the flow and changes of magic around Dobby's body. At this moment, a shocking scene took place. The magical energy in Dobby's body suddenly disappeared in the infirmary like lightning, and then appeared outside the Hogwarts castle in the blink of an eye. Xiao Ke, what is going on? Luo Lin asked Xiao Ke, who flew out with a confused look on his face. Xiao Ke calmly explained, this is not an ordinary apparition, but a more advanced and rare space jump magic. Only a very small number of extremely talented wizards or elves can master this powerful space magic. Moreover, the amount of magic power consumed by using this kind of magic is quite huge. Usually, those house elves can naturally comprehend and use relatively simple magic skills such as apparition without any learning. However, most house elves can only do this. Only a small number of house elves with bloodline talents can comprehend this kind of space jump magic. Hearing this, Rowling suddenly understood. He thought, so, the reason why the house elf named Creaker from Regulus Black's family was able to successfully escape from the mysterious cave was probably because it suddenly awakened this magical space jump magic. Thinking of this, Rowling became more and more curious about the mysteries of the magic world. Harry Potter stood aside, quietly watching the conversation between Rowling and Xiao Ke, with a hint of doubt flashing in his bright blue eyes, as if trying to understand every word they said. However, despite his curiosity, he did not interrupt them rashly, but waited patiently for the right opportunity. Finally, when Rowling and Xiao stopped talking, Harry couldn't wait to open his mouth and asked a series of questions. Rowling, why are you here suddenly? And what kind of magic is that apparition? Also, do you know that Dobby guy? Rowling smiled and greeted Harry, and explained, good evening, Harry. I heard that you were injured, so I came to visit you. As for apparition, it is a powerful magic that allows us to move from one place to another instantly. But it takes a certain amount of skill and experience to use this kind of magic. As for Dobby, well, I don't know him. I just overheard your conversation with that house elf outside. I'm so sorry. But, Harry, not all house elves are as eager for freedom as Dobby. Chapter 84. Success. Most house elves would regard freedom as a shame, and feel like they were abandoned by their masters. But it is undeniable that Dobby is indeed a special case, a house elf who is not living a very happy life. A house elf who is different and yearns for freedom. After saying that, Rowling gently patted Harry's shoulder. At this moment, Harry became more curious about Dobby, the house elf. Harry looked at Rowling gratefully and said sincerely, thank you for coming to visit me, Rowling. Your concern makes me feel very warm. And before you came just now, I seemed to hear that strange sound again. Did you hear it? I didn't hear it. I'm relieved to see that you are okay, Harry, you have to rest early. Well, I'll go back to the dormitory first. Oh, by the way, I met Colin when I came here. He originally came to visit you, but something happened on the way, so I let him go back first. As soon as he finished speaking, Rowling turned around and walked out of the school infirmary quickly. On this day, the room of requirement seemed unusually quiet, as if time had frozen at this moment. Rolling, George, and Fred stared at the crystal balls on the table without blinking. The largest one was like a huge basketball. This was the core crystal ball that Rolling had spent several days carefully carving. It was as important as the central nervous system of the entire internet world. The other palm-sized crystal balls are used to connect to the internet. They are similar to the popular short video platforms and cleverly incorporate photography. However, they can only post videos and communicate. Luo Lin also gave this new gadget a resounding name, Weidu. Open Weidu, shake it and all your worries will go away. At this moment, Luo Lindy projected the content he had just filmed onto the internet. At the same time, the camera on the table began to shake, and with the energy George continued to inject, it slowly began to reveal a clear picture, accompanied by sound. In an instant, this sudden change made the three people blush, and their hearts could not help but become excited, and their excitement was beyond words. Success! Rolling, this is definitely a historic moment. Congratulations to you! George Fred couldn't contain his inner joy and shouted excitedly. Ha 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 ha, I want to congratulate you too. Next, we must go all out to promote this good thing. Up to now, although it has an incomparable excellent selling point, the marketing aspect cannot be ignored. Moreover, the internet field is now completely blank and full of infinite possibilities. Therefore, my plan is to take out a batch first, and then give them to the little wizards in the 4 academies, so that they can become the first users of our Weidu platform. I believe that these little guys will love it and become our most loyal and reliable customers and active and enthusiastic ambassadors of publicity. Roland passionately and impassionedly expounded his grand vision. Wow, Rolling, you are simply an absolute genius. George Fred couldn't help but give his sincere admiration. Okay, then I'll leave it to you. I plan to send out 20 first and distribute them evenly to each college, with each college getting 5. Luo Lin explained the task in a firm tone. Don't worry, Rolling. We will definitely complete this mission successfully. And you can take this opportunity to promote those weird little gadgets in your hands. After saying that, Rolling stretched his body comfortably and walked briskly towards the auditorium to enjoy the food. Finally, I can take a break. Meanwhile, George and Fred have already started the promotion work. They have a clear goal and first targeted the prefects of each college as a breakthrough point. On the other side, after several days of recuperation, Harry's injured arm had healed as before. At this time, Rolling walked to Harry's side, took out a crystal ball from his arms, handed it to Harry and said, "This is for you, Harry. You might as well try to inject some magic into it." Facing the strange crystal ball in front of him, Harry asked suspiciously, "What on earth is this, Rolling? Is it a sphere for divination?" As soon as Rolling finished speaking, Harry couldn't wait to try it out. Instantly, an interface appeared, and Harry touched it with his hand, which was the video that Rolling had recorded. "How did you do it, Rolling?" Harry Potter asked curiously. "Haha, it's nothing tricky. Harry can even shoot a video and upload it." As soon as Rolling finished speaking, Harry Potter began to explore it. At the same time, the little wizards around him also looked over with inquiring eyes. And Ron even lay on Harry. Seeing the curious looks of Harry and his classmates, Rolling smiled proudly and showed everyone how to operate the crystal ball. He told everyone that they could not only watch existing videos, but also upload their own videos to share with others. Seeing this, other students gathered around and showed great interest in this magical crystal ball. At this time, Ron couldn't help but shouted, "It would be great if we could use it to record our adventures." Harry nodded, his eyes sparkling with excitement. He imagined using the crystal ball to record their adventures in the wizarding world and sharing them with his friends. As the sun sets and night falls, George, Fred and Rolling are reunited once again. "That's great, Rolling." Everything was delivered successfully, and they showed great enthusiasm for it. There were even many little wizards who came to inquire about its price. However, we declined them all on the grounds of limited quantity. "I think we should let the market warm up first," Fred said excitedly. Rolling smiled and responded, "That's right, George, Fred, you really have the knack of marketing. In fact, you can totally accept their reservations. After my investigation, the monthly salary of an adult wizard is about 100 gold galleons. Therefore, setting the price at 50 gold galleons is really reasonable." This price is quite attractive and very cost-effective. George and Fred looked at each other and nodded in agreement, of course. Llewellyn knew very well that this pricing would not only attract more potential customers, but also establish a good reputation and lay a solid foundation for the promotion of subsequent products. The next day, when Rowling came to the hall for dinner, he saw little wizards from all the schools gathered around the crystal ball, exclaiming from time to time. It was like a plague that quickly swept through the entire Hogwarts. Chapter 85. Lockhart is causing trouble. During this time, Lockhart's restless heart began to stir again, and he even proposed to Dumbledore to set up a dueling club. At this moment, Rowling stood quietly outside the long table, and a group of young wizards from 4 colleges, all under the age of 3rd grade, quickly gathered around him. They were all extremely excited, with curiosity and anticipation in their eyes. Some of the little wizards couldn't wait to take out their beloved crystal balls and prepare to upload this exciting duel to the internet. Only a loud and passionate voice was heard echoing in the classroom. Now, please allow me to solemnly introduce to you, this is my right-hand assistant, Professor Snape. Along with Lockhart's passionate shout, Professor Snape walked up to the long table with steady steps. Then, Lockhart continued to shout proudly, today, he very generously agreed to take a certain risk to come and give us a little demonstration. So, dear Potions Professor, you don't have to worry about any harm. Please feel free to show it boldly. After saying that, he did not forget to give a smile that he thought was very charming and confident. In this way, the 2 professors walked to the center of the long table together, then each raised their wands high and performed a standard wizard duel elegantly. After the ceremony, they retreated to the 2 ends of the long table in tacit understanding. As Lockhart shouted the countdown command 3, 2, 1, Professor Snape waved his wand without hesitation and instantly cast a powerful spell, Expelliarmus. In an instant, a dazzling light rushed like lightning, rushing straight towards the defenseless Lockhart. Poor Lockhart didn't even have time to react before he was knocked to the ground by this sudden force. This is indeed a very good spell, Professor Snape. Don't take it to heart. I have no hidden intention in saying this. In fact, I had already expected this. The reason I acted this way is simply to set a negative example for those fledgling wizards. Before he finished speaking, Lockhart quickly turned over from the ground like a nimble loach, and began to defend himself impatiently. Perhaps we can first teach these students what methods should be taken to resist the evil curses cast by those with ill intentions. This way, it will surely be more effective. Snape responded with a stern face and a low and cold voice. Wow, this is a great idea, Professor Snape. Without further ado, let's find a few volunteers to come and demonstrate it in person. Let's choose Potter and Weasley, that's you two. Lockhart changed the subject, trying to divert everyone's attention in this way and successfully resolve the current slightly embarrassing situation. However, Snape did not let him get what he wanted. He narrowed his eyes slightly and then interrupted without any hesitation, wait a minute, Weasley's wand has problems even when casting the simplest spells. If he accidentally hurts Mr. Potter, he may have to be sent to the infirmary for treatment. So in my opinion, it would be more appropriate for our student Malfoy to take action. After saying that, Snape stretched out his hand without hesitation and pushed Draco, who was standing beside him, directly onto the long duel table. Draco smiled confidently when his name was called, and walked to the middle of the long table and gave Harry Potter a wizard salute. At this time, Lockhart shouted excitedly, "Great! Let's see which of the 2 outstanding students is better. Now, when I count to 3, you will cast spells at each other at the same time. 3, 2. Before Lockhart finished counting down, Draco took the lead in swinging his wand and casting a spell that instantly hit Harry Potter. Harry Potter turned 360 degrees in the air and fell to the ground. Malfoy smiled triumphantly. Harry Potter saw Malfoy being so mean, and immediately stood up and cast a spell. Malfoy, who was still watching the show, was instantly hit by the spell, and turned 720 degrees in the air. He fell in front of Snape. Snape's face was full of undisguised disgust. He stretched out a hand, picked up Malfoy as easily as if he were a chicken, and then threw Malfoy back onto the long table with force. Oolong out of the hole! As Malfoy shouted, a cobra suddenly shot out from the wand in his hand and landed straight in the center of the long table like an arrow. When Harry Potter witnessed this scene, he was stunned for a moment and had no idea how to deal with this sudden situation. "Don't move, Potter!" Let me take care of this troublesome guy for you." Snape noticed Harry's panic-stricken and clueless look, and immediately stepped forward to help, without forgetting to ridicule Harry. However, at this moment, a voice rang out, "Let me do it, Professor Snape." It turned out that Lockhart rushed forward quickly and cast a flying spell without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, the ferocious cobra seemed to be hit by an invisible force, and its whole body instantly flew into the air, and then fell to the ground at an extremely fast speed. After being hit so hard, the cobra obviously became extremely angry and irritable. It opened its bloody mouth, revealing its sharp fangs, and showed a posture that it would launch a fierce attack on the weak and helpless little wizards around at any time. Seeing that the situation was becoming more and more critical, something unexpected happened. Harry suddenly uttered a series of strange and incomprehensible words, which sounded like some mysterious spell or code. And the originally agitated cobra miraculously calmed down. It no longer made any aggressive moves, but just stared at the other little wizards not far away. But in the eyes of the people around, they mistakenly thought that Harry was using a strange and weird language to secretly control and command the cobra to attack them. The surrounding discussions reached Harry's ears. Harry felt aggrieved. He did not control the cobra. He just saw the cobra getting angry and subconsciously recited a passage of snake language, hoping to calm it down. "Look, he is indeed the heir!" some classmates shouted. "No, that's not it." Harry tried to explain. Snape walked forward with a gloomy face, muttering something, and then suddenly cast a blazing fire spell. In an instant, the creepy cobra was swallowed by the flames and turned into ashes, dissipating into nothingness. However, at the same time, Snape's doubtful eyes were fixed on Harry Potter, as if he wanted to see some clues from him. Chapter 86. Exclusion. As this thrilling scene happened, the video spread across the internet at an alarming speed, like wildfire. In the blink of an eye, the entire Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry learned a shocking news: Harry Potter actually has the ability to communicate with snakes, Parseltongue. At this moment, Harry Potter was still at a loss, and had no idea what was happening. When he returned to the Gryffindor common room, Hermione Granger explained to him the special meaning of Parseltongue and the negative effects it contained. She told Harry solemnly that this rare talent was often accompanied by an ominous sign, and told Harry that he was very likely the heir to the mysterious Chamber of Secrets. Hearing this, Harry Potter suddenly fell into extreme helplessness. Facing the deliberate alienation and rejection of his classmates, as well as the doubts and suspicions of his closest friends, he had never felt such a strong sense of loneliness. Tormented in his heart, Harry Potter silently rode on his beloved flying broom, streaked across the sky like a meteor, and finally landed on the cliff outside Hogwarts Castle. He also saw all the content on the internet. Standing on the edge of a towering cliff, Harry Potter looked at the sparkling black lake in the distance. His eyes passed through the lake, and stared at the magnificent Hogwarts Castle for a long time. This place that once made him feel warm and regarded as his home, now because of a sudden change, everyone has a deep misunderstanding of him. Endless pain surged into his heart like a tide, making it almost impossible for him to breathe. "Are you looking at the scenery, Harry?" a voice suddenly came, breaking the silence around him. Harry Potter turned his head sharply and saw Rowling standing behind him. His eyes were full of surprise and confusion, as if he couldn't believe that he would meet her here. "Rowling, why are you here too?" Harry Potter's voice was filled with a hint of sorrow, as if he was hiding endless pain in his heart. He stared closely at the crystal ball in Rowling's hand. Rowling smiled, raised the crystal ball in his hand, and gently shook it in front of Harry Potter. "Of course, through this, as long as there are other crystal balls, I can make it resonate, and I can easily locate the opponent's position. Moreover, I saw someone transmit the video of the duel just now to the internet through the crystal ball. I immediately rushed to find you." Hearing this, Harry Potter's eyes gradually became moist. He lowered his head and murmured to himself in a trembling voice, "I don't understand why everyone refuses to believe me. I haven't done anything wrong." Tears slid down his cheeks and dripped onto the cold ground. Rowling took a step forward, reached out his hand and gently patted Harry Potter on the shoulder, and gently comforted him, "Don't be sad, Harry. I believe in you. The real heir to the Chamber of Secrets will never be you. Those rumors and misunderstandings are only temporary. One day the truth will come to light." Harry Potter slowly raised his head, a faint glimmer of hope in his eyes. He looked at Rowling and asked in a slightly hoarse voice, "Really? Do you really believe me?" "Certainly." In the quiet and bookish library, Harry was sitting at an old wooden table, concentrating on completing the heavy homework carefully assigned by the professors. However, although he was fully focused on the task at hand, he always had an indescribable sense of uneasiness lingering in his heart. It seemed that countless pairs of eyes were secretly watching him. Every time he raised his head inadvertently, he would catch the strange looks from the little wizards around him. At the same time, a low whispered voice poured into Harry's ears like a tide, "I'm sure he must be the heir of Slytherin. You see, he is a guy who can speak Parseltongue. Everyone knows that this is a characteristic of dark wizards. Who has ever heard of ordinary wizards being able to communicate with snakes?" These unfounded speculations and accusations were like a sharp sword, mercilessly piercing Harry's heart. Harry tried to ignore the gossip and focus on his homework, but his inner irritability became stronger and stronger. Finally, he could no longer bear this depressing atmosphere, stood up suddenly, packed up his books in a hurry, and left this suffocating place. As Harry walked down the empty corridor with heavy steps, a strange voice broke the silence again. The voice seemed to come from the depths of the distance, looming but clearly audible, "Blood. I need blood." Harry couldn't help but stop and listen carefully. Following the guidance of the voice, he walked forward involuntarily. Turning a corner, Harry was stunned by the sight. A group of spiders were running around in panic. Even more horrifying was the fact that a little wizard who had been completely petrified was lying on the ground, and there was a petrified ghost floating quietly in the air, like a weird work of art. At this moment, a familiar and harsh voice suddenly sounded from behind Harry, "I have caught you this time. Potter, this time I will make sure you can't stay here." Harry was shocked and turned around slowly, only to see Filch's distorted and hideous face appear in front of him, with a look of revenge in his eyes. "No, Filch, you misunderstood. I really just happened to pass by here." Harry's face flushed red, and even beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He stammered while unconsciously stepping back, with obvious panic in his eyes. However, Filch did not give Harry any chance to explain. His sharp eyes stared at Harry, as if he wanted to see through his appearance to the secrets hidden deep in his heart. Then, Filch rushed to the direction of Professor McGonagall at an astonishing speed and brought Professor McGonagall over. Professor McGonagall came in a hurry. She looked at Harry seriously, with a look of scrutiny and suspicion. Facing Professor McGonagall's sharp gaze, Harry couldn't help but feel guilty, but he still said calmly, "Professor, please believe me, I definitely didn't do this. I swear to God." His voice was slightly trembling, and it was obvious that he was very nervous. Professor McGonagall frowned slightly and said in a firm tone, "Harry, I'm afraid the situation this time is beyond my ability. I think you need to go to Headmaster Dumbledore in person and explain everything to him." After that, she took Harry and turned to walk towards Headmaster Dumbledore's office. After Harry Potter left the library, Rowling followed him quietly. Seeing Harry explaining to others in such a panic, Rowling shook his head helplessly. In his opinion, Harry's behavior was simply a cover-up, and people could see at a glance that there must be something fishy. However, since Harry was about to meet with Headmaster Dumbledore, Rowling could not continue to follow him. So he quietly returned to his dormitory. Chapter 87. Back to reality. As soon as he returned to the room, Rowling immediately took out the crystal ball. He concentrated and connected the crystal ball to the crystal ball on Harry's body through the internet terminal. Instantly, a clear picture appeared on the surface of the crystal ball. It was the scene Harry was seeing at the moment. Through this magical crystal ball, Rowling felt as if he was personally there and felt everything happening around Harry. Harry Potter walked into Dumbledore's office with a nervous mood. As soon as he entered the door, his eyes were attracted by the densely packed portraits on the wall, but soon, a bird with no feathers caught his special attention. Harry couldn't help but walk closer to take a closer look at it. However, the moment he approached, a shocking scene happened. The turkey turned into ashes without any warning. "Harry!" The sudden shout frightened Harry so much that he trembled all over. "Principal, Principal!" Harry was concentrating on observing the firebird. He was really startled when he heard the sudden call. The bird suddenly caught fire. "It really wasn't me who did it. I didn't know how to help it," Harry explained hurriedly, fearing that Dumbledore was wrong. "Don't worry, Harry, it's certainly not you. When its life comes to an end, it will choose to be reborn in this way. Dumbledore said calmly, this bird has extraordinary strength and can easily grab extremely heavy objects, and its tears have magical effects and can heal the damage caused by various toxins. Rowling, who witnessed all this, was confused at the moment, thinking to himself, is this the real reason why Dumbledore called Harry over? Was it just to reveal the special power of the Phoenix to him? No, this is legilimency. Dumbledore actually peeked into Harry Potter's memory. How interesting! At this moment, Harry seemed to remember something and said quickly, Headmaster, their petrification has absolutely nothing to do with me. Well, I naturally believe that it was not your doing. However, I still want to ask, is there anything else important that you want to tell me? Dumbledore looked at Harry, his eyes revealing concern and expectation. No. No, Principal. Okay. You can go now. At this moment, Llewellyn was in the dormitory, and time seemed to have quietly frozen. Unconsciously, Llewellyn's originally bright eyes gradually became hazy, and suddenly the whole person fell into a state of stagnation. Then, as if he had lost all his strength, he slowly fell on the bed and fell into a deep sleep. When Llewellyn opened his eyes again, he saw the familiar rental house. For a moment, he was at a loss, and couldn't understand why he was here. His eyes swept across the room and finally stopped at the table full of clutter. There was the manuscript he had just completed. Could it be that I have traveled back again? System. Rowling called out in his heart again and again, hoping to get a response from that mysterious being. However, no matter how hard he tried, there was silence all around, without a single movement. What on earth was going on? Was everything he had experienced before, including the magical Hogwarts and the desirable world of Harry Potter, just an illusory dream? Thinking of this, Llewellyn's mood was extremely complicated. Logically, he should feel lucky to know that all this was just a dream, but at this moment, he did not feel any joy in his heart. On the contrary, a heavy sense of loss surged into his heart like a tide, making him feel bitter and sad. It felt like he had finally grasped a life-saving straw, but at the last moment he found out that it was just a mirage. Yes, even if this is really just a beautiful dream, there will be a time to wake up. As an ordinary office worker, perhaps this ending is more in line with reality. After all, the various pressures and difficulties in life will not disappear because of a dream. Llewellyn held the phone tightly in his hand, and the screen showed his parents' contact information. However, unlike the eagerness he felt when he lost his relatives in the dream, he was actually a little hesitant at this moment. Although he was eager to hear their voices, he didn't know why he couldn't muster up the courage to dial that number. Perhaps he was afraid to face the reality, or he didn't want his parents to know about his current difficult life. In this way, Llewellyn stared at his phone blankly, letting his thoughts wander in his mind, but he could never take that crucial step. Rowling's mind was in a mess. He recalled his experience in the magical world in his dream, the wonderful magic, the thrilling adventures, and the friendship he had with Harry and others. Everything seemed so real. He couldn't help but wonder, was this really just a dream? Perhaps this was a revelation, an escape from real life. Llewellyn decided to re-examine his life. He picked up his phone and called his parents. When he heard his parents' voices, he finally found a little comfort in his heart. Although he has returned to reality, Rowling knows that the magical journey will remain in his memory forever. He decided to incorporate this experience into his novels so that more people can experience the charm of the magical world. After Llewellyn finished talking to his parents, it seemed like a long time had passed, but he felt relieved and happy. The moment he put down his phone, he took a deep breath, looked firmly at the computer screen, and decided to start a new journey, writing a magic novel that belongs to him alone. Sitting at the desk, Rowling closed his eyes and recalled the wonderful experiences in the magical world. Every detail and every adventure was vivid in his mind, as if it happened yesterday. He couldn't wait to share these wonderful stories with more people, so he tapped the keyboard with his fingers, and his thoughts flowed out like a spring. As the story gradually unfolded, Rowling was completely immersed in his creation. He forgot all the noise and troubles around him and devoted himself to the magical world full of fantasy. Here, he could give full play to his imagination, making the characters in his works come alive and the plot's ups and downs. In the process, Llewellyn also rediscovered the beauty and passion of life. He used to be overwhelmed by the busy work, but now he has found a way to release his soul. Every time he finishes writing a chapter and looks at the full document, he will feel an indescribable sense of satisfaction. Luo Lin is full of expectations for this upcoming work. He longs to be recognized and loved by readers, and hopes to convey the belief in courage and dreams to everyone through the power of words. Because only with enough courage to pursue dreams can life become colorful. However, just as Luo Lin was immersed in his beautiful vision, one morning, as usual, Luo Lin woke up from his sleep and went to the bathroom to wash up. But at this moment, a sudden sense of trance suddenly hit him. In an instant, he seemed to hear a faint shout, Luo Linear! Luo Linear! Chapter 88. At first, Luo Lin thought he had misheard, but when he stopped what he was doing and tried to listen carefully, the voice disappeared like a ghost. What is going on? Is it really because of my recent work pressure that I have hallucinations? Luo Lin couldn't help but feel puzzled, but he couldn't find a reasonable explanation. Night fell in a hurry after a busy day. Luo Lin put down the manuscript, and his tired spirit made him unable to muster any strength. Just as he lay down on the bed and was about to fall asleep, the voice suddenly sounded again. Roland! Roland! The calls seemed to pass through the endless darkness and fog and penetrate into Roland's chaotic consciousness. He listened carefully to this familiar and kind voice, and an indescribable joy surged in his heart. Yes, this was Xiaoke's voice. Xiao Ke, is that you? There was a hint of disbelief and confusion in Luo Lin's tone. Yes, Luo Lin, it's Xiao Ke. Wake up soon, you can't continue to sleep. All this is caused by the dream cloud card. If you don't wake up, you may never escape from this nightmare. It's bad to be discovered. Xiao Ke's voice was full of anxiety and worry, but then, it seemed to sense some danger and stopped talking before it finished. Luo Lin's heart suddenly rose to his throat, and an unprecedented fear enveloped him. What is going on? This is so weird. I didn't even realize that I was in danger. If Xiaoke hadn't broken into my dream and reminded me in time, I would have been trapped here forever, unable to extricate myself. Luo Lin thought to himself, beads of sweat appearing on his forehead. However, what made him even more uneasy was that at this moment, he could not feel any magical fluctuations of his own. He knew that this meant that as time went on, his ability to perceive the world around him would become weaker and weaker, while the magic contained in that damned cloud card would become stronger and stronger. In this way, it would be extremely difficult to break the current predicament. Faced with such a grim situation, Luo Lin fell into deep contemplation. How can he get rid of the control of this dream card? How can he regain the lost magic power? Countless questions came to his mind, making him feel anxious and helpless. Luo Lin thought with fear. Even the sealing rod has lost its sensitivity. What should I do? Ah! I remembered what my father once said, use magic to defeat magic. Luo Lin took a deep breath, tried to calm himself down, and began to concentrate on feeling the subtle connection between him and the other cloud cards. At this moment, a miracle happened. The wind card suddenly appeared, and a dazzling light flashed around it. Then, the water card, fire card, thunder card, and all the cloud cards that Luo Lin had conquered emerged one after another, emitting a brilliant light, surrounding Luo Lin's body. In an instant, the entire dream world was like a huge mirror, shattered under the weight. And in the broken void, a beautiful dancing butterfly appeared in front of Luo Lin's eyes. At the same time, Luo Lin's lost power surged back like a tide. Cloud card, return to your original form. As Rolling chanted the mysterious sealing spell, a cloud card shining with dreamy colors quietly appeared in his palm. When Luo Lin slowly opened his eyes, what he saw was Xiao Ke quietly hovering in the air, and under his feet was a glittering light array. Xiao Ke saw Luo Lin waking up from his deep sleep, and couldn't help but cheered excitedly, great! Luo Lin, you finally woke up. You must have successfully sealed the dream card in your sleep just now. This guy is so treacherous. Yes, Xiaoke. This time it's really thanks to you, otherwise I don't know how to deal with it. Luo Lin said with a smile. He looked down at the cloud card in his hand, which was flashing with a strange light. But what's so special about this dream cloud card? Why does it make me lose my power? Rolling asked puzzledly. Xiao Ke flew forward and explained, the dream cloud card has the ability to control dreams. It can trap people in endless nightmares. Moreover, it can absorb the magic power of the trapped person, making it impossible for them to break free. Only by finding and sealing it can this predicament be resolved. Luo Lin nodded to show that he understood. At the same time, Harry Potter had just stepped out of the mysterious door of Dumbledore's office and walked up the spiral staircase when he unexpectedly met Ron and Hermione, who were rushing over with anxious looks. "Harry, where have you been?" "I just returned to the dormitory, but found that you were missing. So I hurriedly pulled Hermione to look for you. Even if you are really the heir of Slytherin, we will never believe that you will hurt those wizards. Don't do anything stupid." Ron shouted anxiously, his words full of concern, but seemed a little clumsy. Thank you, Ron. But if you are not good at comforting people, try to say less." Harry sighed helplessly, with a bitter smile on his face. Then, he turned his gaze to Headmaster Dumbledore, who was staring at the three of them in silence. "The headmaster has talked to me and he expressed his belief that I haven't hurt anyone. So, please rest assured," Harry said in a firm tone, his eyes revealing an unquestionable confidence. However, despite this, Ron and Hermione's brows were still tightly furrowed. Apparently, another petrification incident had occurred. Moreover, the petrification of a Muggle wizard had plunged the entire Hogwarts into a deeper panic, and Harry, as the object of suspicion, was undoubtedly under tremendous pressure. "That's right, Harry. After my analysis and observation, I firmly believe that the sinister and evil-minded Malfoy is the heir of Slytherin. Not only is he a pure-blood wizard, but he is also a member of Slytherin House, and the evil in his heart is simply obvious. For this reason, I carefully prepared the Polyjuice potion. As long as we can successfully become Malfoy's followers, we will be able to uncover his true face," Hermione Granger said confidently. "Great, Hermione! Let's get started without further delay," Harry shouted excitedly. "Please be patient, Harry. There is still a key problem that has not been solved. We lack Malfoy's followers' hair as raw materials," Hermione hurriedly explained. "Oh, this is really a tricky problem. Malfoy's followers follow him around all the time. It's not easy to get their hair." Harry frowned and asked worriedly. "Don't worry, I have a plan. Look, this is the sleeping cake I secretly took from George and Fred. If you take a bite of this delicious cake, you will immediately fall into a deep coma." Ron answered wittily and complacently. "Oh, Ron, if George Fred knew he wouldn't spank you. How is this possible? I am their dearest brother. Besides, they are busy with Llewellyn's crystal ball and the internet thing, so they won't pay attention to me. In that case, let's get started right away." Harry could no longer suppress his inner impulse and couldn't wait to put it into practice. Chapter 89. Diary. In the Slytherin common room, Harry and Ron perfectly transformed into Goyle and Clark, Malfoy's two loyal followers. At this moment, Malfoy was lazily lying on the comfortable sofa, his face filled with an extremely comfortable expression. However, when his eyes swept over the two followers in front of him who seemed familiar yet a little weird, a trace of doubt arose in his heart. He always felt that something was not right, but he couldn't tell what went wrong. "What are you two doing there? Sit down." Malfoy waved his hand casually, motioning them to come over. Then, Malfoy continued in a tone of false calm, "You know what? I am so surprised that the Daily Prophet did not mention a word about the monster attack on Hogwarts. In my opinion, it must have been suppressed by that old fool Dumbledore. My father always told me that Dumbledore was the worst person since the founding of Hogwarts. Humph, I have already written to my father about everything that happened in the school." At this moment, before Malfoy finished speaking, the disguised Harry suddenly raised his voice and shouted, "That's not the case." This sudden roar was like a thunderbolt that cut through the sky, instantly interrupting Malfoy's endless speech. Malfoy was stunned at first, then turned his head with suspicion, staring at this fake Harry Potter, his eyes full of scrutiny and questioning. "What? Is there anyone worse than Dumbledore? Who is it?" At this moment, Harry suddenly realized that his behavior just now was a little abnormal, so he quickly added, "Harry Potter." "Hi. That sounds quite plausible. You're absolutely right, the famous savior, Harry Potter. Haha, it's a huge joke. I never thought that there would be people who would regard him as the heir of Slytherin." Malfoy sneered with disdain on his face. "In that case, I'm sure you know who the real heir is?" Harry asked, staring at Malfoy with burning eyes. "No, I don't know. I've said this many times. But my father did mention something about it." It is said that the Chamber of Secrets was opened once 50 years ago. As for who opened it at that time, he refused to reveal any information, only saying that the person was later expelled from school. The last time the Chamber of Secrets was opened, a Muggle-born student died. So in my opinion, this time the Chamber of Secrets is opened again, it won't be long before another unlucky mudblood is killed. If I can choose, I sincerely hope that the guy who dies will be Hermione Granger. When Ron heard this, he was so angry that he could no longer suppress his excitement and was about to rush forward. Fortunately, Harry reacted quickly and reached out to stop Ron in time. "Hey! What's going on with you two today? Why are you behaving so strangely?" Malfoy was very confused when he saw this and questioned them with a frown. Ron was no longer impulsive. When he saw the scar on Harry's face, they both ran away immediately. After running out of the Slytherin common room, Harry and Ron breathed a sigh of relief, their bodies gradually returning to their original state. They patted their chests with lingering fear, secretly glad that they were almost discovered just now. The two hurried to the girls' bathroom to find Hermione Granger. However, when they stepped into the bathroom, they were shocked by the sight before them. The floor was wet, as if it had just been washed by a flood. Harry walked into the bathroom cautiously with suspicion, and soon noticed that all the faucets were open and the water was running. Just as Harry was full of doubts, a low sob was faintly heard from a cubicle. His heart tightened, and he slowly approached the cubicle with light steps. At this moment, suddenly, a ghost rushed out. It was the gold digger. She shouted angrily, "It's too much. Someone threw a book into the toilet while I was using it, and it just hit me." Before she finished speaking, she passed through the wall and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Harry calmed down and looked at the lonely notebook on the ground. The words Tom Riddle were written on the cover. Ron, who was standing by, saw this and quickly came over and said, "I know this name. I saw it last time when I was cleaning the trophy display room. It seems to be the winner of some special honorary contribution award, Tom Riddle." Harry's curiosity grew when he heard this. He muttered to himself, "Special honor contribution award? To receive such an honor, this person must be a kind-hearted person." Harry put away the diary and couldn't help but become interested in the mysterious Tom Riddle. Harry and Ron soon found Hermione, who had turned into a catman. She didn't dare to come out even though she heard someone crying outside. She was afraid that others would see her strange appearance, so she could only wait quietly for the potion to wear off. Seeing Hermione turned into a catman, Ron's eyes were actually slightly excited. Rowling stared at the crystal ball in front of him, and peeked at the image in the crystal ball on Harry's body, muttering to himself, "I didn't expect Ron to be so fond of this type of thing. It seems that he is really keen on pursuing excitement. And right now, Harry Potter may not have much time left to face the terrifying basilisk. Soon the sword of Gryffindor will be mine, ha 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 ha. However, before that, I must find ways to improve my own strength. During this period of time, I have devoted myself to the research and development of the internet, which consumed a lot of my precious time. Thinking back to the brief and hasty confrontation with the basilisk last time, there is still a gap in strength. If I meet the basilisk in the future, I am afraid I can only rely on the Clow cards or choose to flee, there is no other way. Although the Clow cards themselves contain unparalleled power, it is basically impossible to drive the Clow cards to exert their full power with the magic power I currently have. Although as the Clow cards were successfully captured one after another, some of the power they contained did increase his magic power. But I have to admit that the current magic reserve seems to be only equivalent to the level of a 5th grade wizard. At this moment, the only thing I can rely on is to skillfully use the powerful power of the Clow cards. If I don't use the Clow cards, the only elements I can touch and use are wind and lightning. But to transform into a Thunder King form, I can only use the Clow cards. Llewellyn took out the Water Clow card, one of the 4 mysterious elements, and stared at it, trying to comprehend the powerful magic contained in it. He closed his eyes tightly and slowly immersed his consciousness in the Water card. In an instant, Llewellyn was absorbed into the Clow card. It was a vast, boundless world, as vast and deep as the endless ocean. The surging waves rose and fell, making bursts of roars. The white waves beat against the shore, splashing countless crystal-clear water droplets. The sky and the sea merged into one, and it was hard to tell where the sky was and where the sea was. Chapter 90, Difficult to Transcend. Is this the environment where the Clow cards live? Rowling couldn't help but mutter to himself, his heart filled with awe. What level has Clow Reed reached? Rowling felt the majestic power emanating from this magical water, as if he had merged into this vast ocean. Llewellyn concentrated on exploring the secrets inside the water sign, trying to experience every subtle change. As time went by, the water sign gradually emitted a faint but eye-catching light, and the soft glow illuminated the surrounding space. At the same time, a fresh and pleasant water vapor filled the air, making people feel particularly comfortable and cozy. Llewellyn became more and more excited because he could clearly feel streams of extremely pure water elements flowing into his body. These water elements were like lively spirits, happily shuttling through his meridians, nourishing his body and soul. The magic power in his body, which originally had no attribute characteristics, was gradually transformed under the infiltration of water elements, and was slowly endowed with the attribute characteristics of water. Gradually, Llewellyn found that his body had perfectly merged with the water. He was no longer just a spectator, but had become part of the water. He could manipulate the water as he wished, letting it flow and change shape as he wished. This wonderful feeling intoxicated Llewellyn, and at the same time gave him a deeper understanding and knowledge of the power of the Clow cards. It turns out that the power contained in the Clow cards can not only flow around the body like the lightning power of the Thunder cards, but also allow the user to completely change form and transform into the body of lightning. Although Llewellyn currently has absolute control over the water element, he is still able to transform himself into a stream of water at will in a short period of time due to his lack of magic power. Just like a liquid substance, it blends into the water silently, making it impossible to find its trace. Llewellyn returned from the reservoir card. He walked briskly to the shore of the mysterious and dark black lake. Then, without hesitation, he merged the reservoir card with himself, instantly turned into a clear spring, and jumped into the bottomless black lake. After entering the lake, Llewellyn swam freely like a fish in water, his movements light and smooth, just like a leisurely and unrestrained fish. As he continued to dive, the light around him became dimmer, but Llewellyn was not affected at all, because he had already perfectly blended with the water, so even in this dark environment, he could still keenly and clearly perceive all the subtle changes around him. In this way, Llewellyn continued to sneak into the depths of the lake carefully. The light around him became dimmer and dimmer, as if the whole world was swallowed by darkness. However, in this endless darkness, suddenly, a very faint light appeared in front of him. The light was like a twinkling star in the night sky, small but extremely dazzling, and instantly attracted Llewellyn's attention. Full of curiosity, Rowling immediately swam towards the light without hesitation. As the distance gradually shortened, his expectation became stronger and stronger. Finally, when he got closer, he saw the wizard dormitory of Slytherin College. Llewellyn slowly returned to the shore and looked down at his current water form. He was pleasantly surprised to find that since entering this mysterious black lake, his perception of the water element contained in it has become stronger. It was as if an invisible force was guiding him, prompting him to establish a closer connection with these water elements. So, Llewellyn closed his eyes and began to absorb the water element energy that was scattered in the air from the black lake with all his concentration. The subtle and pure energy flowed into his body like a trickle. He could clearly feel the flow and convergence of every water element, and that wonderful feeling made him intoxicated and unable to extricate himself. Gradually, Llewellyn felt that the meridians around him began to swell slightly. He knew that this was close to the limit of what his body could bear. If he continued to forcefully absorb it, it might cause damage to himself. Therefore, although he was still a little reluctant, he decisively stopped the absorption. Afterwards, Llewellyn slowly returned to his original state. He stood quietly on the shore, feeling the benefits of the baptism of water element. He was pleasantly surprised to find that as long as he was in an environment filled with water elements, his perception ability would be greatly enhanced, and he would be able to perceive all changes around him with a keener insight. However, just now, the swelling and pain in the meridians in his body made Llewellyn suddenly realize, the wizard's body is so weak. Even if he persists in tempering himself, there is still an insurmountable limit to the realm he can reach in the end. It was like a cage as solid as a rock, tightly binding one's soul, trapping it forever, unable to break free from the shackles and transcend the mundane world. However, the wonderful experience of transforming into the form of water just now made Llewellyn deeply appreciate the endless power contained in the origin of water. This power is like the bright stars in the vast universe, shining and irreplaceable. Kuro Lido used part of the origin of water to create the Kuro card. This is exactly the source of the powerful power of the Clow cards. It is only a part of it, and it is definitely not comparable to any mundane thing in the world. It is completely different from the purification source in Luo Lin's body hidden in the rules of the world. The origin of water is not hidden, but widely scattered in the water of this vast world. At this moment, the mysterious black lake filled with extremely rich water elements must contain some extremely precious water origin, which is exactly the source of the extremely pure water elements that are constantly scattered in the air from the black lake. If he could successfully obtain this source of water, he might be able to break through the shackles of the mortal body in one fell swoop. And the source of water in the Kuro card had self-awareness since it was created by Kuro Rido. It is also Rolling's partner. Luo Lin took a deep breath and took out the reservoir card again. He held the card tightly, feeling the endless power contained in it, and then threw it into the calm lake without hesitation. Instantly, the moment the water reservoir card touched the water surface, it burst into dazzling light and quickly transformed into a beautiful and agile water spirit. This water spirit exuded charming water light all over its body. Water spirit, please listen to the call from my heart. Use your unparalleled power to gather the purest and most powerful water source in this vast black lake. Luo Lin shouted loudly, and his voice echoed over the entire lake. As if sensing the strong will of its master, the water spirit began to exert its ability with all its strength. Chapter 91. Thunder Punishment. It was seen that its whole body was shining with dazzling light, which continuously flowed out of its body, producing a wonderful resonance and interaction with the original water source in the Black Lake. They were like two old friends who had been reunited after a long separation, attracting each other and entangled with each other, forming a breathtaking scene. At this moment, countless dots of light shining with faint blue light were scattered on the surface and deep waters of the Black Lake. These dots of light were as dazzling as the stars in the night sky, and they gathered in the direction of the water spirit. Luo Lin widened his eyes and secretly rejoiced in his heart. Sure enough, there is the origin of water here. Time passed quietly in the tense atmosphere, and every moment seemed particularly long. Finally, after a long period of convergence, a crystal-clear, deep blue water droplet-shaped object slowly floated in the air. This was the source of the water in the Black Lake. Looking at the extremely precious source of water in front of him, Luo Lin's heart beat faster with excitement. He couldn't wait to stretch out his hands, ready to welcome this hard-earned treasure. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. A loud noise was heard, and the calm lake suddenly rose into a huge wave. A giant squid that was larger than one could imagine actually jumped up from the bottom of the water. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the newly born source of water into its stomach in a gulp at lightning speed. Luo Lin's eyes widened, his face full of astonishment and anger, and endless resentment and unwillingness surged in his heart. He had never dreamed that there would be complications at this critical moment, and an uninvited guest would come to disrupt the situation. Seeing that the extremely precious source of water was about to fall into the hands of others, Luo Lin was extremely anxious, and he completely ignored his own safety and rushed towards the giant squid like an arrow from a bow. Water spirit, quickly trap this guy for me, and don't let it escape back to the bottom of the water. Rolling roared in rage, his voice resounding through the sky, as if he wanted to vent all the anger in his heart. The giant squid obviously saw through Rolling's intention, and it suddenly opened its mouth and sprayed out a ball of thick black ink, trying to disrupt Rolling's vision and hinder his progress. Rolling quickly dodged the ink attack by turning sideways. In a flash, Luo Lin flashed to the side of the giant squid in the blink of an eye. He held the wand tightly in his hand, and a supersonic spell shot out from the top of the wand with a sharp sound, hitting the giant squid's huge body. Although the giant squid's tough and thick skin was beyond imagination, this blow still left a scar on its surface. But the giant squid still felt the pain, and let out a deafening roar, while waving its strong and powerful tentacles, rolling up the surging lake water, and rushing towards Luo Lin like an overwhelming force. Facing such a fierce attack, Luo Lin was not afraid at all. He was like a nimble and agile fish, turning and dodging on the turbulent water surface, and never let the squid succeed. At the same time, Roland kept searching for possible weaknesses in the giant squid. "O Clow card created by Clow Reed, please show me your unparalleled true power. Listen to the call from the bottom of my heart, Spirit of Thunder, respond to my call quickly. May the impartial and just thunder of heavenly punishment, like a raging wave, fiercely wash away all the sins of this giant squid. At this moment, the rage in Rolling's heart was burning fiercely, as if it was going to set the whole world on fire. As he spoke passionately, the giant thief, who was originally bearing his fangs and claws, was tightly bound by the water spirit above the sparkling water surface and could not break free at all. At the same time, the originally clear sky suddenly became overcast, and the thick clouds seemed like a heavy black curtain, pressing people to the point of suffocation. And the lightning elves hidden in the clouds were vaguely echoing the rolling thunder in the sky, as if brewing a shocking explosion. Suddenly, a dazzling lightning bolt streaked across the sky, like an extremely sharp sword, slashing straight at the giant squid below. There was a deafening boom and the seemingly indestructible hard skin instantly became fragmented and bloody in front of this extremely terrifying thunderbolt. In the blink of an eye, this majestic beast had lost its vitality and died completely. Seeing this, Luo Lin was slightly confused. Why did he just cast the Rikuro card once, and it could cause such an amazing change in the world and create such a strong resonance? Could it be that this is the unshakable power of faith that is necessary when casting spells? Just as he was lost in thought, a clear and pleasant reminder sound came to his ears. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully killing the giant squid. Here are the rewards you can choose. Option 1, you will be able to condense 2 high-level water elemental magic cores. Option 2, you will get a platinum treasure chest that shines brightly. The rewards inside are completely random. Luo Lin was suddenly awakened by the system's voice, and his mind quickly pulled out of his trance. He thought to himself, magic core? It doesn't seem to be of much use to me at the moment. After all, with my current strength and ability, I can't use it for the time being. So, what about this never-before-seen platinum treasure chest? This is a rare opportunity. Maybe there are endless treasures or powerful powers waiting for me to discover. Thinking of this, Luo Lin said without hesitation, "System, I choose 2." Before he finished speaking, the huge giant squid corpse that was originally floating quietly on the water began to slowly shrink and condense. At the same time, a dazzling light suddenly flashed, and then a platinum treasure chest shining with bright light suddenly appeared in front of Luo Lin. At the same time, the origin of water condensed by the water elf appeared. Luo Lin couldn't hold back his excitement, and stretched out his hands impatiently, wanting to touch the source of water that exuded endless vitality and energy. However, just as his fingers touched the source of water, a strange energy instantly surged into his body, as unstoppable as a flood that broke through a dam. In the blink of an eye, the origin of water was completely integrated into Luo Lin's body, and conveyed to him an important message: this is the original power of the water in the Black Lake. It is the source of power for all the water flows in the Black Lake, and it is also the beginning of its birth. Luo Lin felt the changes in himself. As long as he was in the Black Lake, it seemed that he could control all the water power in the Black Lake with a single thought. Chapter 92. Unscrupulous Reporter. Such a big commotion at the Black Lake certainly couldn't escape the attention of the sharp professors. Even some young wizards who liked to wander around at night noticed something unusual. Not long after, a clever young wizard quickly took out his crystal ball and recorded everything that happened in front of him. Afterwards, this shocking video swept the entire internet like a whirlwind, triggering countless people to repost and discuss it crazily. For a time, all kinds of sensational headlines emerged one after another. Shocking. Who is making the paw-paw sound in the Black Lake in the middle of the night? Rowling kills the giant squid, and the heir of the Chamber of Secrets, Harry Potter, will soon face Rowling's trial. However, at this moment, Rowling, who was at the center of the incident, was completely unaware of the uproar on the internet. He was completely immersed in the miraculous changes inside his body. He was surprised to find that his originally ordinary body began to gradually transform, as if he had been reborn. Could this be the legendary water body? Sigma. This special physique born from the power of the origin undoubtedly broke the limits of the wizard's body and filled the future with endless possibilities. It's really unexpected. From now on, there will be heaven as long as I am Luo Lin. I will live forever. Ha 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 ha. Luo Lin just finished bragging, and the next second a bolt of lightning from the sky instantly struck Luo Lin's feet. Luo Lin was instantly frightened. Sure enough, he couldn't pretend to be stupid, so he fled. By the way, he put the platinum treasure box into the space ring. Luo Lin dragged his slightly tired body back to the dormitory slowly. When he was about to reach out to open the mysterious box, there was a sudden and loud bang 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 knock on the door. This sudden sound made Luo Lin's heart tighten. He stopped what he was doing and looked at the door. At this time, George and Fred appeared at the door, their faces filled with excitement and excitement. "Good evening, George and Fred, why did you come to see me suddenly?" Rowling asked suspiciously. "Good evening, Rowling. You have no idea what has happened," George said impatiently, panting. "Your video has gone viral all over the internet. Who would have thought that so many little wizards would show such enthusiasm for our crystal ball? In my opinion, we can take the opportunity to sell it and enjoy the huge dividends brought by the internet," George said with great joy, and even a little incoherent. Hearing this, Luo Lin suddenly felt his head in a mess, like a tangled mess. He frowned, took out the crystal ball from his pocket and looked at it carefully. However, what surprised him was that his every move was filmed and uploaded to the internet without him knowing when. This was really amazing. At this moment, Luo Lin couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, no matter where you go, there are always those paparazzi. Just as Rowling was thinking about it, a message from Harry Potter came into his sight. "Rowling, is this true? Are you really going to judge me?" After seeing the message, Rowling shook his head helplessly and replied quickly, "Harry, I think this must be a misunderstanding. I trust you 100%. It's just those unscrupulous reporters with no professional ethics who are talking nonsense to attract attention." After replying the message, Rowling couldn't help but let out another long sigh, secretly cursing the little wizard who spread rumors and caused trouble. At this moment, Malfoy, who was known as an unscrupulous reporter, was staring at the many comments below the title on the crystal ball in front of him with great interest. The comments kept emerging like a surging tide. Students from Hufflepuff House left an indignant message. It was that guy named Harry who petrified the little wizard. On the other hand, the voices of Slytherin College were full of contempt and hatred. "Humph, Harry Potter is born evil." Such remarks were heard one after another. At the same time, in the dormitory, Rowling was explaining his plan to George and Fred in an orderly manner. "Of course, no problem, George, Fred. I will leave this matter to you. We currently have 300 pieces in stock. Although there are only a few hundred students in Hogwarts, I think we can consider selling these things to the families of young wizards outside the school. Moreover, if some little wizards don't have enough money to buy them for the time being, we can also come up with an installment payment model and sign a magical contract. In addition, we can also ask them to help promote our products, and then give them some discounts or pay some commissions as rewards." Rowling talked eloquently, with clear ideas. Hearing this, George was so excited that he almost jumped up. He said with a happy face, "That's great, Rowling. You are simply a born capitalist. Oh, no, it should be said that you are an outstanding entrepreneur in the wizarding world." After that, he pulled Fred and ran away like a gale, leaving Rowling staring at their receding backs, speechless to himself. What a funny guy. Luo Lin looked at the magic wand in his hand and thought secretly. He decided to make some promotional posters first to let more people know about their products. He waved the magic wand, and beautiful posters appeared in front of him. It elaborated on the various uses of the internet and listed a series of very attractive preferential activities. Luo Lin nodded happily, and like a cunning fox, he carefully and quickly posted the posters outside the doors of every dormitory in the school without anyone noticing. At this moment, the mysterious crystal ball in Rowling's hand suddenly flashed with strange light, and an important message from Fred came out. "Hey, Rowling. I have good news for you. George and I have contacted those little wizards who have received our free crystal balls, and posted relevant sales information on the internet. So far, all 300 crystal balls have been booked. Among them, as many as 120 young wizards have expressed their intention to buy them, and another 80 have chosen to pay in installments. The remaining crystal balls have also been booked by the families of the young wizards. In my opinion, we should be able to successfully harvest the first batch of gold galleons tomorrow." When Luo Lin read the news, he was still secretly posting posters. "Still posting, what the hell? Go back to sleep." Chapter 93. One Shot into the Soul. Luo Lin returned to the dormitory with great anticipation, took out the treasure chest from his space ring, and fixed his eyes on the mysterious, simple and magical platinum chest. He put his hands together and muttered silently, "One shot to the soul. One shot to the soul." As if this could summon good luck. Then, he carefully reached out his hand and gently opened the lid of the treasure chest. In an instant, a dazzling light gushed out from the box, instantly illuminating the entire slightly small dormitory of Luo Lin. When the light gradually dissipated, Luo Lin looked carefully and saw that there was only an energy body in the treasure chest that was flickering with a faint light. He picked it up curiously and looked at it carefully in his palm. At this moment, the energy body suddenly burst into a brilliant blue light and quickly condensed into a small bottle of dark blue liquid. At the same time, a powerful and mysterious magical wave spread out like ripples, shocking everyone. Just by taking a look, one can feel the endless weight and depth contained in it. "System, what is this?" Luo Lin asked with his eyes wide open and a puzzled look on his face. The system's voice came slowly, "Host, don't worry. This system is using the blood power of this giant squid to trace the source and gather a trace of precious blood from the sea monster Kraken that this system once found in the world of Norse mythology. As long as you take it, not only will you have extraordinary self-healing abilities, but your lifespan will also be greatly extended. You know, in this magical world, the average lifespan of ordinary wizards is less than 200 years old. Unless you rely on external forces to prolong your life." Hearing this, Luo Lin swallowed the bottle of dark blue blood without hesitation. Luo Lin's body instantly turned into water. With the injection of fresh blood, the originally transparent body slowly turned dark blue. Suddenly, a strong ancient vicissitudes of life breath that seemed to be able to penetrate the long river of time surged like a surging tide. It spread rapidly. Along with this mysterious and powerful breath, an indescribable pain also came, like millions of ants gnawing deep in the bone marrow, making people feel so painful that they wish they were dead. At this moment, Luo Lin's body seemed to be ignited by a raging fire. Every cell was like a wild horse that had broken free from its reins, becoming extremely active. They were running frantically and metabolizing at an astonishing speed. It felt like the muscles and bones of the whole body were undergoing a cruel reorganization, and the endless pain was unbearable for him. Luo Lin kept switching back and forth between his body and water form. His originally tough body was now shaky like a candle in the wind, and he could only roll and struggle painfully on the cold and hard ground. The heart-wrenching pain was like drinking the deadliest poison in the world, which made his internal organs seem to be torn apart. Gradually, Luo Lin's consciousness began to blur, and finally he could not withstand the overwhelming pain and passed out. Xiao Ke, who was standing by, watched everything quietly, and did not stop Luo Lin from drinking the items from the treasure chest left by the giant squid, because he was keenly aware that this seemingly ordinary liquid might be some kind of blood that contained infinite power. However, what Xiao never expected was that Luo Lin drank it all without hesitation. Such a decisive and resolute action made Xiao admire him. "This kid is really fierce." Xiao Ke sighed secretly. It is true that if a person is not ruthless, he cannot stand firm. He is so cruel even to himself. If he were an ordinary person, he would have died long ago. Fortunately, Luo Lin had previously merged a part of the essence of water, which turned his body into a water body. Otherwise, if a mortal body rashly swallowed this mysterious substance, the consequences would be disastrous. Maybe I will have to find a new Kuro magician again. Although Xiao Ke was still full of worries when he saw Luo Lin suffering such great pain, from the current situation, it seems that this time will bring unexpected benefits to Luo Lin. After weighing the pros and cons, Xiao Ke decided not to think about it anymore, turned around and left, muttering, "Forget it, never mind. I'm going to sleep first." After Luo Lin fell into a coma, his body was gradually covered by a layer of strange light. The light flashed with a faint blue color, just like the aurora. As time went by, the light became more and more dazzling, as if it was going to swallow up the whole world. Finally, at a certain moment, the light suddenly exploded like a volcanic eruption, forming an extremely gorgeous sea of light. When the light gradually faded away, there was no trace of Rolling who was lying there. Instead, there was a drop of water that was as crystal clear as crystal and emitting charming luster, quietly floating in the air. Xiao Ke suddenly woke up from his sleep, and his big, lively eyes stared at the strange water drop in front of him with astonishment, his heart full of puzzlement and confusion. Just as he was lost in thought, the water drop suddenly cracked, and then Luo Lin's figure slowly emerged from the crack. At this moment, Luo Lin's whole body was filled with a heart-pounding powerful and mysterious aura, and even the air around him seemed to become heavy because of him. At the same time, the purifying light in Luo Lin's body seemed to be inspired by something and began to dance and flicker happily, blending and echoing with the mysterious aura on his body. At this moment, Luo Lin's eye of elements was like the brightest star in the night sky, shining with breathtaking light, as if it was seeing through the essence of all things in the world. Xiao Ke stared at this scene with his mouth wide open, unable to speak for a long time. After a long while, he came to his senses and muttered in disbelief, You actually evolved into a water spirit." Luo Lin silently felt the surging power that continuously emerged from his body, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a satisfied smile. He thought to himself, I really didn't expect that this evolution would bring such a revolutionary change, it was really unexpected. It seems that the blood of the Kraken in the Nordic world is indeed worthy of its reputation. If the previous experience was just a baptism and tempering for me, then now it is undoubtedly a true transformation. Time passed like the falling snow outside the window, and in a blink of an eye, Rowling's second Christmas at Hogwarts arrived. At this moment, Rowling was sitting leisurely at the spacious and gorgeous long table in Hogwarts, enjoying the sumptuous banquet in front of him. At the same time, he was enthusiastically discussing the various possibilities for the future development of the Internet with George and Fred. Rowling, I have to admit that the number of wizards in our British wizarding world is quite limited. Take the current sales situation for example, it feels like it's almost reaching the top. After all, only 800 crystal balls have been sold in total, plus the 200 crystal balls that were purchased by installment payment. As far as I know, the total population of wizards in the entire British wizarding world is probably only a few thousand. But surprisingly, we have successfully covered 85% of wizarding families. So next, should we consider expanding our business to the wizarding world abroad? Chapter 94. Development Direction. Fred became more and more excited as he spoke, because just before Christmas Eve, Rowling had distributed 35,000 gold galleons out of the 40,000 gold galleons he had received, minus the installment payment, to the two brothers at a 20% ratio. A total of 7,000 gold galleons. This huge amount of wealth that seemed to have fallen from the sky was like a splendid magic feast, which completely changed them in an instant and turned them into dazzling and enviable little rich men in the Hogwarts campus. And on this special Christmas, Rowling showed his unparalleled generosity and magnanimity. He carefully prepared and gave each professor a precious crystal as a unique Christmas gift. This kindness not only includes Ron, Hermione, and other good friends, but also extends to the Centaurs and Unicorn tribes who have a deep friendship with Rowling, and even the famous Mr. Ollivander. It must be said that the Internet at this time has become like an invisible but extremely powerful giant network, successfully covering the entire British wizarding world. George, Fred, as far as the current situation is concerned, being able to cover the British wizarding world is already the limit of what we can achieve. You know, the wizarding world in other countries is quite exclusive, and its internal situation is even more complicated and complex. So, in my opinion, we might as well put more energy into the Internet, such as increasing the publicity of the props you have developed. Moreover, I plan to conduct a comprehensive and in-depth upgrade and optimization of the entire system in the near future, so that all wizards can sell their items through this platform, and then use owls to deliver them by mail. In this way, we can build a brand new business model. Or, we can try to shoot some wonderful videos and set them as paid content. Only in this way can we truly open a new era of Internet development. George Fred was eager to try, and urged Luo Lin to upgrade the system. They seemed to see a more vast ocean waiting for them to dig. George Fred, don't be anxious. Now is not the right time. I want all wizards to adapt to the current Internet and become familiar with its use before it is the right time. I think you can do some promotional warm-up in our column first. Rowling explained calmly. Yes, Rowling, we were reckless, we will follow your pace, George Fred said seriously. Just when Rowling and everyone were discussing a topic enthusiastically, suddenly, three highly anticipated characters, Harry, Hermione, and Ron, appeared in everyone's sight. Merry Christmas, Rowling! I have to tell you that we have made an amazing discovery. Harry said. As soon as the young wizards around saw Harry Potter, they quickly scattered, as if they could not avoid him. However, Harry was already accustomed to this situation and did not care. After all, he knew that he had the trust of Headmaster Dumbledore. Merry Christmas to you too. What kind of discovery did you make that requires my assistance? Rowling asked curiously. Well, we think it's better to find a quieter place to talk about it in detail. There are too many people here and too many people talking." After saying that, Harry pulled Rowling out of the bustling hall. After they reached a secluded place, Harry lowered his voice and continued, "Ron and I accidentally found a diary of a man named Tom Riddle a few days ago. One time, I accidentally spilled ink on the book, and I unexpectedly discovered that the diary actually had its own consciousness. What's even more surprising is that through it, we learned about the terrible murder in the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago. The person who opened the Chamber of Secrets was Hagrid. However, we really don't know how to question him about this. You know, Hagrid is my best friend, he is so kind-hearted, it is absolutely impossible for him to do such a cruel thing." When Rowling heard this, he had already roughly judged the situation in his heart. It seemed that Tom Riddle was about to make a move. Rowling was not afraid of Tom now. He could change his water form at any time, and he could do nothing about it. "That's right, Harry. But Hagrid should know some inside information. I am willing to accompany you. But, can we wait until after Christmas? After all, this festival is of great significance to everyone." Rowling responded. "Of course." Harry agreed without hesitation. However, on a sunny afternoon, Harry and Ron rushed to Rowling's dormitory in a hurry and anxiously, and knocked on the door hard. "Harry, Ron, why did you two come to visit suddenly? Isn't today the day you are going to participate in the Quidditch match? Why did you come to my place?" Rowling asked as he opened the door with a puzzled look on his face. "Rowling, something terrible is happening. Hermione has been petrified. She was lying in the reading room, and when the professor found her, she had already turned into stone. It was Professor McGonagall who informed us. I think we must go find Hagrid again immediately. He was always hesitant and reluctant to speak before, but now we can't delay any longer," Harry said anxiously, with beads of sweat even appearing on his forehead. "In that case, let's set off quickly, Harry." Rowling frowned, thinking to himself, on this trip, Harry will definitely step into the mysterious and dangerous Forbidden Forest under the guidance of Hagrid to find Aragog, that creepy eight-eyed giant spider. At the same time, Dumbledore will also face investigation. Thinking of this, Rowling felt that he had to follow closely. After all, Hagrid's guidance this time was too thrilling, and he almost killed Harry. Soon, the three of them arrived in front of Hagrid's hut. After they stopped, they reached out and gently knocked on the slightly old wooden door. There was a rustling sound from inside the house, and then the door slowly opened, and Hagrid's face was full of vigilance. He held a huge crossbow tightly in his hand, as if ready to deal with sudden danger at any time. When he saw clearly that it was Harry and others standing outside the door, his tense nerves relaxed a little, but his face was still filled with a heavy haze. "Harry, you shouldn't come here." Hagrid's voice was low and solemn, as if it contained endless worry and uneasiness. Harry looked at Hagrid firmly and asked, "I think, Hagrid, you can't keep hiding it any longer. You must know who opened the terrible Chamber of Secrets, right?" Hagrid looked embarrassed and hesitant, but finally he gritted his teeth and said, "You must understand one thing first." However, before he finished speaking, there was a sudden knock on the door, breaking the tense and depressing atmosphere. Chapter 95. Dumbledore is dismissed. Harry and Ron panicked immediately. It was already night, and if the professors saw them here, they would definitely lose points. In contrast, Rowling was unusually calm. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and with his keen magical perception, he knew who the person was. "Hurry up and cover yourself with the invisibility cloak. Keep quiet and don't make any noise," Hagrid ordered. Harry and Ron hurriedly ran to the wall to hide their figures, while Rowling used his shadow to hide in the darkness. With his current concealment ability, he would not be discovered by a wizard like Professor McGonagall as easily as before. Hagrid opened the door suspiciously, and Dumbledore and the Minister of Magic were standing outside. "Principal Dumbledore? What's going on?" Hagrid stuttered in surprise. "Good evening, Hagrid. I wonder if I can come in and chat with you?" Dumbledore asked with a smile, his tone still gentle and kind. "Oh, of course, of course. Please come in." Hagrid quickly stepped aside. "To be honest, Hagrid, I'm here on an extremely important mission. There have been several incidents of attacks on Muggle wizards recently, and the situation is quite serious. That's why I came here specially." Fudge said with a righteous look on his face. However, before Fudge could finish his words, Hagrid could no longer suppress his excitement and shouted, "You should know that I definitely didn't do those things. Fudge, you have to understand that I have complete faith in Hagrid. He would never do such a thing." Dumbledore also spoke to defend Hagrid. "Dumbledore, don't get excited. The incident 50 years ago did cause many unfavorable factors for Hagrid. I had to bring him back to the Ministry to assist us in the investigation." Fudge faced Dumbledore and patiently explained in detail. "Take me away? Where?" "Azkaban." Hagrid roared with his eyes wide open and his face full of anger, his voice full of disbelief and indignation. His sturdy body trembled slightly, as if it would explode at any time. "I don't have a choice," Fudge informed expressionlessly, his tone so calm that it made people feel a little cold. At this moment, the wooden door that had been tightly closed was pushed open again, making a dull sound. Lucius Malfoy stood at the door arrogantly with a contemptuous smile on his face. "Fudge, so you're here," Lucius said sarcastically, but his eyes fell directly on Hagrid, and a trace of disgust flashed in his eyes. "What are you doing here? Get out of my house!" Hagrid roared unceremoniously. His thunderous voice echoed in the room, hurting people's eardrums. "Believe me, I don't want to enter your house. Can this be called a house?" Lucius curled his lips and sneered with contempt. His exquisite robes formed a sharp contrast with Hagrid's simple residence. "I just came to school for something and told the headmaster here," Lucius replied lightly, seeming to care nothing about Hagrid's anger. "What's the matter with you coming to see me at school?" Dumbledore looked at Lucius calmly. His wise eyes seemed to be able to penetrate all disguises and reach people's hearts. "I and other directors think it's time for you to leave. Here's your suspension order." Lucius straightened up, raised the document in his hand high, and showed it to everyone in a victorious manner. His voice was sharp and piercing, with a sense of pride that was difficult to conceal. When Fudge heard the news that Dumbledore was suspended, his body trembled involuntarily and he became extremely excited. He couldn't wait to reach out his hand to check the authenticity of the suspension order. However, when he saw Dumbledore calmly reaching out to take it, he realized that his behavior was a bit inappropriate, and his face turned red, and he withdrew his hand in embarrassment. Lucius then said, "This document is signed by all 12 directors, and we all agree that you seem to be increasingly confused recently. If this kind of attacks continue to happen, then those Muggle-born wizards in Hogwarts will probably all die in no time." He stated loudly with a righteous look on his face, as if he had accomplished an extremely remarkable feat. "Since all the directors have agreed that I should be suspended, then I think it is indeed time for me to leave. However, as long as there is someone in Hogwarts who sends out a message for help, someone will surely step forward to provide assistance." After Dumbledore finished speaking, he deliberately glanced at Harry who was in the invisibility cloak. "It's so touching. Let's get going," Lucius responded while listening to Dumbledore's confusing words. "Let's go, Hagrid," Fudge ordered in an unquestionable tone. If someone wants to find something, then all they have to do is follow those spiders. Sure enough, these spiders will lead them to where their goal is." After Hagrid finished speaking, he followed Fudge away. Rowling, Harry, and Ron immediately removed their disguises, and suddenly saw a large group of spiders slowly crawling towards the Forbidden Forest. "Hagrid just said that if we want to know the answer to the mystery, we must follow them closely." Ron stared at the group of spiders with a sharp gaze, muttering to himself. "Then let's go," Harry responded without hesitation. Then, Rowling followed closely behind them. As Harry walked deeper and deeper, in a moment, increasingly large trees came into view. They had already stepped into the heart of the forest. The surrounding environment was dark and dim, with only a few faint moonlights barely illuminating Harry's way forward. The three of them continued to advance without stopping, and gradually larger roots appeared on the ground, surrounded by countless small spiders. Llewellyn was surprised to see this scene, thinking to himself, the reproduction ability of this 8-eyed giant spider is really strong. Fortunately, there are no 8-eyed giant spiders in his dark forest. Suddenly, a deep voice like thunder sounded, "Who is here? Hagrid, is that you?" This sudden voice seemed to come from the 9 netherworlds, making people feel terrified. "We are Hagrid's friends." Harry took a deep breath and tried to keep his voice calm, but he still couldn't hide the trembling in it. Just as he finished speaking, a huge spider with 8 eyes slowly emerged from the endless darkness. Its hideous and terrifying appearance was creepy. Ron was so frightened that his face turned pale as paper, and his body began to tremble violently. He stammered, "It's so scary. I've always been very afraid of spiders since I was a child." Rowling, who was standing next to him, quickly took out his wand and held it tightly in his palm, secretly preparing to deal with any emergency at any time. Llewellyn stared at the giant spider, which was more than 2 meters tall, and was filled with astonishment and surprise. "You know, these guys are definitely not good people." Chapter 96, Aragag. You are Aragag, right?" Harry suppressed his inner panic and tried to make his tone more stable, but he still couldn't completely hide the slight tremor. The giant spider called Aragag nodded slightly, indicating his agreement. Then, it let out a low roar, "That's right, Hagrid has never brought anyone else to our territory." As Aragag finished speaking, the spiders of all sizes that had been quietly dormant around began to become restless, and it seemed that they could attack everyone at any time. Hagrid is in big trouble. There have been a series of strange attacks in the school recently, and some people falsely accuse Hagrid of doing all these things. Moreover, they also claim that Hagrid has opened the mysterious Chamber of Secrets again. Harry explained to Aragog anxiously. However, faced with such accusations, Aragag was extremely angry. He opened his bloody mouth, glared, and roared, "That's simply not true. Hagrid can never open the Chamber of Secrets." His roar was deafening and echoed throughout the cave. The real monster was actually bred inside this castle. Aragag continued to roar, as if he was going to use all his strength to prove Hagrid's innocence. For a moment, the atmosphere was extremely tense, and a thrilling battle seemed to be about to break out. "So who killed the girl 50 years ago?" Harry continued to ask. "It's a very ancient creature that we spiders fear the most. The girl died in the bathroom. And I stayed in Hagrid's trunk the whole time." Ron watched in horror as the huge and creepy spiders approached them step by step, and warned Harry with a trembling voice. At the same time, Harry also realized the danger he was in. They were already surrounded. He hurriedly responded, "Oh, thank you for reminding me. Then let's get out of here quickly." However, things went against their wishes. The huge spider said, "Want to leave? Not so easy. My children, you didn't touch Hagrid because of my instructions. But now that fresh and delicious flesh and blood are offered to me, I can't restrain them anymore. Farewell, Hagrid's friends." As soon as the words fell, the surrounding spiders attacked Rowling, Harry and Ron fiercely like hungry tigers. Witnessing this scene, Llewellyn was not afraid at all. Instead, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a contemptuous smile. "Humph, it's simply like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. You are overestimating your own abilities." Hearing this, Harry asked suspiciously, "Rowling, what did you say just now?" However, Rowling did not answer. He just saw his figure flash, and in an instant he was covered with a coat of lightning that shone with dazzling light. The whole person seemed to have transformed into the god of thunder, emitting an extremely powerful aura of electricity. Sharp lightning shot out in all directions like a dragon emerging from the sea. Wherever he passed, spiders fell to the ground and died with screams. The scene was extremely tragic. Then, Llewellyn rushed into the spider swarm without hesitation, moving through it like a ghost, his movements swift and agile. Sometimes he rushed to the left, sometimes he rushed to the right, and the magic wand in his hand turned into a deadly sword. Every time he swung it, it brought a string of dazzling electric sparks, killing or injuring those spiders that dared to block his way. Harry and Ron stared in amazement at the astonishing scene unfolding before them. They were completely stunned by the terrifying strength displayed by Rowling. "Amazing!" Ron couldn't help but murmur in a low voice. At this moment, Rowling was showing off his skills among the dense swarm of spiders as if he was possessed by the god of war, with unparalleled confidence shining in his eyes. "We simply can't sit idly by." Harry finally came to his senses, raised his wand high without hesitation, and threw himself into this thrilling battle with Ron beside him. The three of them worked together and had a tacit understanding. Among them, Rowling took on the responsibility of the main attack, while Harry and Ron stood on both sides tacitly and assisted Rowling in launching the attack with all their strength. However, what was despairing was that the 8-eyed giant spiders in this area seemed to be endless. Gradually, even the always brave and fearless Rowling began to feel tired. He thought to himself, this is not a solution. I will train Harry and Ron later. These two guys were too weak. Harry and Ron gradually became exhausted and out of breath. In a flash, a pair of huge wings suddenly appeared behind Rowling. Then he grabbed Harry with one hand and picked up Ron with the other hand. Then he soared into the sky like a rock, spreading its wings, and flew straight out of the gloomy and terrifying Forbidden Forest. Oh my god, thank you so much, Rowling. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid we would really have died. Harry, who survived the disaster, had a sincere light in his eyes. He held Rowling's hand tightly, his tone full of sincerity and relief. Ron was also very excited, but more angry. His face flushed red, and he shouted with gritted teeth, "It's all Hagrid's fault. He actually asked us to follow the spider. When he comes back from Azkaban, I will kill that bastard myself. But I still have to thank you, Rowling. Without you, we would never have been able to get out of here alive." After calming down a little, Harry frowned and asked Rowling seriously, "Rowling, do you know what the monster in the Chamber of Secrets is?" This question has been lingering in Harry's mind, making him unable to sleep or eat. Rowling took a deep breath and said slowly, "According to my guess, it is most likely the legendary basilisk. This creature is extremely dangerous and mysterious, and spiders will feel extremely scared when they see it. Moreover, it is said that anyone who is stared at by a basilisk will die immediately." Rowling thought to himself that Ginny Weasley should have been captured by Tom Riddle and taken to the Chamber of Secrets during this period. Rowling no longer concealed what he could tell. "Basilisk? Then what should we do? Why don't we notify the professor?" Harry said hurriedly. "Harry, this is just my guess. I don't think the professor will believe it. I'll go back and rest. Good night." Rowling said and left. "Harry, let's go back too." Harry and Ron returned to the dormitory with heavy hearts. They decided not to tell the professor about this matter, but to investigate it themselves. He buried his head in the books that Hermione found, hoping to find more information about the basilisk. Chapter 97. The Abducted Students. The next morning, before the sun rose completely and the sky was slightly pale, Llewellyn got up early and went to the Black Lake to exercise. He was full of expectations, hoping to exercise here as usual and feel the pleasure and power brought by the abundant water element energy. However, when he just arrived at the lake, the scene in front of him shocked him. The Black Lake, which should have been full of vitality and vigor, became unusually quiet at this moment, as if it had lost all its vitality. There was a depressing atmosphere in the air, making people feel a little suffocated. Llewellyn couldn't help but frown tightly, and a feeling of uneasiness surged in his heart. He carefully observed the surrounding environment and found that the color of the lake water had become dull and no longer as clear and transparent as before. The once rich and powerful water element energy seemed to have disappeared without a trace, replaced by a weak and unstable energy fluctuation. Llewellyn immediately realized the seriousness of the problem. The water source here had become lifeless after he absorbed it and lost its energy supply. This amazing discovery made Llewellyn fall into deep self-blame. He never thought that his behavior would have such a huge impact on this beautiful lake. Now, the Black Lake is gradually losing its vitality and will slowly become a pool of stagnant water. Fortunately, the Black Lake is near Hogwarts Castle. The energy that keeps pouring out from there is like a torrent, continuously pouring into the Black Lake. This energy is like a sweet rain that moistens the earth, giving the Black Lake new vitality and vigor, and gradually making up for the loss of its origin. Llewellyn stood quietly by the lake, carefully feeling the subtle changes in the surrounding environment. Gradually, his mind suddenly became clear. This is the true meaning of the so-called yin and yang. The laws of nature are profound and mysterious, which is amazing. Just as the water in the Black Lake is of the yin element, and the yang energy innate in every little wizard in Hogwarts Castle is of the yang element, the two are interdependent and mutually transformed, forming a cycle that never ends. In the past, when Llewellyn understood the yin and yang of Tai Chi and practiced Tai Chi, he only stayed at the surface, thinking that it was to overcome hardness with softness and speed with slowness. However, now that he truly understood the mystery of the mutual generation of yin and yang, he realized that his previous understanding was too superficial and insignificant. At this moment, Llewellyn was completely immersed in this indescribable wonderful state. His heart became more and more peaceful, just like a flawless mirror, clearly reflecting the appearance of everything around him. Time passed quietly, and his breathing began to become deep and even, perfectly blending into the natural atmosphere around him. Luo Lin slowly closed his eyes, letting the qi in his body flow freely with his body movements. His posture was agile and flexible, and every movement was light and graceful, like the clouds floating in the sky, or the spring flowing in the mountains, full of endless rhythmic beauty. Gradually, the calm surface of the black lake began to tremble slightly, as if an invisible hand was gently stirring it. Tiny ripples spread out from the center of the lake, very weak at first, but as time went on, these ripples became more and more obvious, as if a storm was brewing. At the same time, a vague energy fluctuation was also constantly accumulating and strengthening. This strange phenomenon was not only due to the original power of water in Luo Lin's body, but also due to the gathering and transformation of the yang energy in the surrounding environment. At this moment, Luo Lin was completely immersed in the exploration of his inner world, and seemed to have forgotten the existence of all external things. He closed his eyes tightly, his expression focused, and seemed to have fallen into a wonderful state of no self and no object, and was completely unaware of any sound from the outside world. At this moment, a rapid bell rang throughout Hogwarts. Then, Professor McGonagall's anxious and serious voice spread to every corner of the campus. All students, please return to your respective dormitories immediately. All professors, please quickly go to the corridor on the second floor to assemble. Hearing this news, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley looked at each other, and a strong curiosity surged in their hearts. They did not follow Professor McGonagall's instructions, but quietly ran to the second floor. When they arrived at the second floor, they found that it was already crowded with professors from Hogwarts. My dear colleagues, I'm sure you have all seen that the heir of Slytherin has once again left a chilling message. The thing we are most worried about has happened. A student has been kidnapped by a terrible monster and taken into that mysterious chamber of secrets. Professor McGonagall said anxiously with a solemn expression. Her eyes revealed deep worry and uneasiness. The current situation is critical. We must act quickly to escort all students home safely. As for Hogwarts, I'm afraid it will have to face the fate of permanent closure. Harry and Ron hid in the corner, watching the scene nervously. Their heartbeats accelerated rapidly, and beads of sweat appeared on their foreheads. Faced with such a serious situation, they didn't know how to deal with it, and could only pray silently that the missing classmate would be safe. Just when everyone was extremely anxious, suddenly, a figure rushed over in a hurry. It was Lockhart. He panted and said apologetically, I'm so sorry. I accidentally overslept. I guess I didn't miss anything important, right? Hearing this, Snape sneered and replied in a cold and disdainful tone, Humph, a big thing did happen. A student was unfortunately captured by a monster. Now it's your turn to show your skills. Lockhart looked closely and found that everyone's eyes were focused on him. He suddenly became nervous and stammered, Show your skills. Seeing this, Snape's eyes flashed with sarcasm, and then he asked, Why? Have you forgotten what you said last night? At that time, you swore that you always knew where the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets was. As soon as these words came out, Lockhart's face turned pale as paper, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. However, facing such a question, he still pretended to be calm, trying to hide his inner panic. At this time, Professor McGonagall on the side slowly spoke, her voice so calm that people could feel an invisible pressure. In that case, I'll have to ask you to go and deal with the monster alone. After all, in all this time, we have never witnessed you truly display your extraordinary abilities. Although her words were gentle, the deep meaning contained in them was self-evident. She had obviously seen through Lockhart and realized that he was just a fool who could only talk big but was actually good for nothing. Chapter 98. Hearing this, Lockhart smiled with false confidence and responded as if he had it all planned out, No problem, please leave it to me. Well, I'll go back to my office to do some preparations. Before he finished speaking, he turned around without hesitation and hurriedly left the scene. Looking at Lockhart's receding back, Madame Pomfrey could not help but frowning, and asked Professor McGonagall with concern, which poor child was captured by that terrible monster. Professor McGonagall took a deep breath, her eyes revealing endless grief and sorrow, and she said softly, It's Ginny Weasley. When Ron learned that it was his sister, he became panicked and could no longer remain calm. He widened his eyes and read out the horrifying words on the wall with horror, Her bones will lie in the Chamber of Secrets forever. Harry, what should we do? Ron asked in a trembling voice. We have to find Rowling as soon as possible, he will definitely help us. Harry Potter shouted anxiously. Then, Harry and Ron rushed to Rowling's dormitory door. They knocked on the door anxiously, over and over again, but still got no response. Harry frowned, took out his wand from his pocket without hesitation, muttered something, and cast the unlocking spell. There was a crisp click sound, and the door lock opened. The two rushed into the room impatiently, but the scene before them disappointed them greatly. The room was empty, without a single person. What should we do, Harry? Ron asked anxiously, his voice full of anxiety and uneasiness. Don't panic, Ron. Although Lockhart may not be here, he may be on his way to the Chamber of Secrets right now. We must tell him everything we know. Harry answered anxiously as he ran towards Lockhart's office. However, when Harry and Ron finally arrived at their destination, they were surprised to find Lockhart packing his luggage. You're actually planning to just leave? Harry asked in disbelief with his eyes wide open. Hearing Harry and Ron suddenly barge in, Lockhart stopped what he was doing in a panic and tried to explain himself in a panic. Yes, that's right, I did encounter a bit of an emergency and I really had to go. As our defense against the dark arts professor, how could you be so irresponsible as to abandon us and run away? Ron was very angry and asked loudly. I don't think I was told that I would have to face those terrible monsters when I first joined. Lockhart retorted in shock. His voice was full of astonishment and dissatisfaction, as if he had been greatly wronged. Harry widened his eyes, stared at Lockhart, and asked bluntly, do you want to run away now? But in your book, you portrayed yourself as so brave, fearless, great, and extraordinary. There was a hint of contempt and disappointment in his tone, and he seemed to be very shocked by Lockhart's true face. Please, use your brain. If I don't do this, if I don't make everyone believe that the thrilling experiences described in the book belong to me, how can my book be a bestseller? Lockhart retorted angrily. His eyes flickered, and it was obvious that Harry had touched a sore spot, but he still tried to defend himself. You're a complete liar. You claim other people's heroic deeds as your own and shamelessly brag about them. Harry was furious, and his accusatory words pierced Lockhart like a sword. At this time, Ron, who had been silent all this time, finally couldn't help but speak. So, at least you should know some magic, right? His eyes revealed a hint of doubt and expectation, hoping to get a positive answer from Lockhart. However, this question made Lockhart fall into a brief embarrassment. Lockhart seemed to feel touched, but he quickly regained his composure and replied triumphantly, Hey, that's right, since you all asked, I might as well tell you that my forgetfulness skill is pretty impressive. Otherwise, those real wizards would have come to harass me. In that case, wouldn't my book lose its credibility and appeal? Before he finished speaking, Lockhart turned around and prepared to reach for the wand placed aside. However, Harry and Ron were one step faster and pointed their wands at Lockhart. And they confiscated Lockhart's wand. Don't even think about it, just follow us to the secret room. At this time, Llewellyn by the Black Lake also slowly came back to his senses. This feeling is so wonderful, as if I am traveling in the void. Could this be the legendary harmony of body and mind, and the condensation of the soul? Suddenly, Llewellyn noticed that the crystal ball in the space ring was glowing slightly, as if someone was sending him a message. Llewellyn took out the crystal ball and looked at it. He frowned instantly. He stood up and rushed to the secret room. I was careless. I didn't expect Tom to take action today. Fortunately, it seems to be in time. When Rowling came to the bathroom, the secret room was indeed opened. Rowling jumped into the cave, and it was pitch black inside. When he saw the light, he saw that the entrance to the cave was blocked by rubble. Rowling sat on the ground with a little urgency, and Lockhart was lying on the side. Rowling, you're finally here. This Lockhart is a liar. He tried to sneak attack Harry and me, but his own spell rebounded. We're blocked by rubble, and what should we do with Harry inside? Ron said anxiously. Don't be anxious, Ron. That means you have been here for a short time. I want to send you out first. Rowling took them out of the secret room one by one and put them in the bathroom. I'll go help Harry now, you can go inform the professors. Rowling said without hesitation. Before he finished speaking, he flashed, jumped, and disappeared from the spot in an instant, rushing towards where Harry was. In the blink of an eye, Rowling had arrived next to the pile of rocks. After landing steadily, he quickly took out his wand from his arms and whispered a mysterious spell, Wingardium Leviosa. As the spell echoed, the originally piled up, disorderly rocks seemed to be given life, and they automatically separated and made way for a passage. Llewellyn walked carefully along the path made of stones, and at the same time skillfully used shadow to completely cover his body. At this moment, another door appeared not far ahead. Just as Rowling was about to get closer to check, a deep and eerie voice came from inside the door. It was Tom Riddle's voice. "I am Voldemort, the descendant of Salazar Slytherin." Then, a huge basilisk suddenly emerged from the stone statue behind Tom, opened its bloody mouth, revealed its sharp fangs, and pounced on Harry. Faced with such a horrible scene, Harry turned pale with fear and ran away. However, Rowling, who was standing aside, was unusually calm. He stared quietly at everything that was happening before his eyes, as if he had already expected such a situation to occur. Suddenly, a deafening bird cry resounded through the sky, breaking the tense atmosphere. It turned out to be Dumbledore's fox, rushing in from outside with a torn hat in his claws. He spread his wide wings and rushed towards the ferocious basilisk like lightning. Fox stretched out his sharp claws and grabbed the basilisk's eyes accurately. Phoenix. Rowling immediately opened the Eye of Elements to observe carefully. This was the first time in his life that he had seen the legendary Phoenix with his own eyes. Before, he had only seen the Phoenix through Harry's crystal ball, but due to the limitations of the crystal ball, he could not detect the magical fluctuations contained in it. In fact, before this, Rowling had already had some vague guesses in his mind. At this moment, with the help of the magical elemental eye, Rowling finally saw the true face of the bird. As expected, it exuded a unique aura of Dumbledore. Could it be that the bird in front of him was Dumbledore's Horcrux? It should be noted that Dumbledore and Grindelwald were not just spending sweet time together. Both of them were powerful wizards with extremely high talents, and they must have a deeper understanding of the mysterious and dangerous black magic. As we all know, there has always been a subtle interdependence between Horcruxes. When a person's soul is split and bound to a Horcrux, he can obtain part of the power contained in the Horcrux. Rowling speculated that the reason why Voldemort was so obsessed with repeatedly splitting his soul and attaching these broken soul fragments to specific objects, such as Ravenclaw's precious crown, Slytherin's mysterious locket, Hufflepuff's gorgeous gold cup and the legendary Resurrection Stone, was that his real purpose was to steal the magical powers carried by these treasures. Moreover, Voldemort carefully hid them in different places. How could Voldemort not know that the ring of the Gaunt family was the Resurrection Stone? There was also the invisibility cloak passed down from the Potter family, and the powerful Elder Wand in Dumbledore's hand. Their respective owners all know their origins. In this case, as a member of the ancient Gaunt family, how could they not know that the ring passed down from their family is the Resurrection Stone that has the power to bring the dead back to life? When Voldemort learned of this secret, he mercilessly killed the Gaunt family. Then, he carefully hid the mysterious ring. He was confident that no one would be able to detect that he had hidden such a vital item in the family he had destroyed. In this way, the Gaunt family who knew about the existence of the Resurrection Stone disappeared completely, and naturally the rest of the world would not know this amazing secret. Chapter 99. Doomed to failure. However, it is not easy to successfully create a Horcrux. The key is that the caster must have the intention to kill and murder others when reciting the spell. Only in this way can the soul be split. If you feel regret or self-blame afterwards, the consequences may be unimaginable. Throughout Dumbledore's turbulent life, the only thing that made him feel sad and regretful was the death of one person, that was his sister Ariana. Could it be that Dumbledore had already begun to try to study Horcruxes at that time? Llewellyn's thoughts surged like a tide, and his eyes were fixed on the phoenix in front of him. Rebirth from the ashes. Such an extraordinary and magical power. No wonder it could die so peacefully on the top of the towering tower. However, the endless regret in this life seemed to have doomed the fate of this Horcrux. It ended in failure. At this moment, the hideous and creepy basilisk's eyes had been severely injured by its claws, making it blind and helpless. Harry quickly picked up the sorting hat and put it on his head, ready to take the opportunity to escape from this dangerous place. A sudden pain came suddenly, hitting Harry's head hard. It turned out that a shining Gryffindor sword fell from the hat. At the same time, Rowling quietly approached Ginny Weasley without anyone noticing, and decisively took the crucial diary into his pocket. At this moment, Tom Riddle, who was standing aside, was completely unaware of this, and was still watching Harry Potter running around in the dark and damp sewer with great interest, as if he was enjoying a thrilling and wonderful performance. Rowling's eyes sparkled with curiosity as he carefully looked at Tom Riddle in front of him. This guy was no ordinary person, he was just a broken soul fragment, but he was able to cleverly absorb Ginny Weasley's energetic and slightly restless soul energy, and successfully get rid of the shackles of the Horcrux. He is indeed a true soul master. The vitality of a young soul is as hot and surging as a raging fire, but this power is still in an unstable stage. Llewellyn nodded his head repeatedly to show his approval, and quickly recorded these observations in detail, while also expressing some unique insights and comments from time to time. Then, a dazzling lightning suddenly burst out from Rowling's hand, and struck Tom Riddle's soul with lightning speed. In an instant, Tom was blown away like a kite with a broken string, and wisps of inky black smoke slowly rose around his body. Well, it seems that even the soul entity in the Horcrux cannot escape the control of thunder and lightning. Rowling muttered to himself as he organized his research notes in an orderly manner, and then slowly withdrew the shadow card that was originally used to conceal his body. It was not until this moment that Tom Riddle woke up from his dream, and looked at Rowling, who suddenly appeared in the diary tightly held in his hand with astonishment. It was unbelievable that before this, he had no idea of Rowling's existence. "Who are you?" Tom asked angrily, his voice revealing endless resentment and anger. Rowling ignored everything around him, his eyes were fixed on the soul of Voldemort in front of him. At this moment, Voldemort's soul had lost its previous solid form, as if it would dissipate into nothingness at any time, but Rowling didn't care about it. He stared at Tom with deep and meaningful eyes, knowing that he could not kill Tom's remaining soul at this moment. Otherwise, even if Ginny could wake up from her coma, her vitality devoured by Voldemort would be difficult to recover, and she might even die. Thinking of this, Llewellyn couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. He chose to remain silent in response to Tom's questioning, because he knew clearly that now was not the time to get entangled with this enemy. Rowling threw the diary in his hand to the ground without hesitation, then quickly drew out his wand and pointed it at Tom Riddle. In an instant, the tip of the wand began to shine with a frightening and dangerous light. At the same time, Rowling took out the Rikuro card from his arms and threw it upward. The card flashed across the sky like lightning and hovered in the air. As Llewellyn whispered the spell, "Elf of Thunder, please listen to my call. Let the thunder of judgment that represents justice come. Use the indestructible power to sweep away all the evil here, use the blazing thunder and fire to burn the incarnation of the source of all evil in this world." The whole space seemed to be shocked by this powerful magic, and the atmosphere became extremely tense. As Llewellyn finished speaking, a dazzling flash of lightning suddenly appeared, and then a huge and majestic thunder dragon appeared out of thin air. It pounced towards the mysterious diary on the ground with its fangs and claws, as if it wanted to devour everything. When the thunder dragon collided with the diary, an extremely powerful force exploded, and the entire space seemed to tremble. Thick smoke suddenly filled the area around the diary. The black smoke was as thick as ink and exuded a suffocating breath. At the same time, Tom Riddle also felt unprecedented pain and fear. He let out shrill and piercing screams, and his soul began to gradually shatter under the impact of this horrible energy. As time went by, the diary became increasingly charred under the continuous attacks of the Thunder Dragon, and eventually lost its original appearance. Tom Riddle, at this moment, had also been reduced to ashes and disappeared into thin air. After completing its mission, the Thunder Dragon gradually disappeared into the air, leaving only the mess on the ground. Llewellyn walked forward, picked up the diary that had been completely destroyed on the ground, and looked at it carefully. Although the terrible Horcrux was successfully destroyed, the diary only turned black, and did not turn into ashes as imagined. It seems that the dark magic attached to it has been completely removed. While Llewellyn was thinking, he suddenly heard a click sound. It turned out that 2 magic cores with faint light fell out of the diary. Llewellyn quickly bent down to pick them up. After a closer look, he found that they were 2 intermediate soul cores. Llewellyn was obviously not satisfied with such a harvest. He frowned slightly and muttered, "It's too bad, there are only 2 intermediate soul cores." Chapter 100. At this moment, Harry, who had been hiding in the sewer pipe and desperately escaping, also noticed the unusual noise coming from the outside world. He hurriedly quickened his pace and finally managed to escape from the narrow and dark pipe and saw Rowling standing not far away. Seeing his familiar and trusted friend, Harry couldn't help but feel ecstatic and shouted loudly, "Roland, come and save me!" When he heard Harry Potter's panicked cry, Rowling turned his head suddenly and saw Harry running towards him, followed closely by a basilisk of astonishingly huge size. Llewellyn didn't waste even half a second, and immediately drove the mighty thunder dragon out like lightning, and pounced directly on the head of the giant. There was a loud bang, as deafening as a thunderbolt from the blue sky, and the giant monster flew backwards like a cannonball that was hit hard, and hit the hard wall heavily. Despite this, the ferocious beast did not die on the spot, but continued to emit extremely shrill and painful roars that resounded through the sky. However, it was obvious that this violent collision had caused it extremely serious damage, so that it could no longer stand up and could only lie there and linger. "Harry, quickly stab its head with the sword in your hand." Seeing this, Rowling shouted without hesitation. Harry Potter saw this and realized that this was a matter of life and death, and he could not afford any hesitation. So he tightly grasped the sword of Gryffindor, which was shining with mysterious light. Then he raised his arm high and stabbed with all his strength. The extremely sharp tip of the sword penetrated the thick skull of the basilisk without any hindrance. As the last bit of vitality drained away from the body of this terrible monster, it finally took its last breath and bid farewell to this world completely. After completing his mission, Harry Potter breathed a sigh of relief, but he still looked at the huge lifeless body in front of him with lingering fear. "Are you okay, Harry?" Rowling walked towards Harry Potter and asked with concern. Harry Potter suddenly came back to his senses, and when he was about to respond to Rowling, his eyes suddenly became empty and lifeless, as stiff as a puppet being manipulated. He raised the shining sword of Gryffindor in his hand high, and rushed towards Rowling fiercely, intending to split him in half. At this critical moment, Xiao Ke appeared and warned loudly, "Rowling exudes the aura of the Claw cards, and it is on the sword." "That is the sword Claw card." Hearing Xiao Ke's warning, Rowling was startled and quickly jumped back several steps, narrowly avoiding Harry's sudden attack. However, Harry Potter was like a god of war, his swordsmanship became more fierce, and he had no intention of retreating, and continued to launch wave after wave of fierce attacks on Rowling like a storm. Facing Harry's aggressive attack, Rowling did not dare to be negligent, and quickly unsealed the stick and held it in his hand to block the sharp sword. At the same time, Rowling flashed, got close to Harry, and then suddenly punched his shoulder, and pressed down with his elbow. Then, he put his palms together, quickly rotated them inwards to form a vertical palm, and used an exquisite wild horse mane move to throw Harry out. Not only that, under the impact of this powerful force, the sword of Gryffindor in Harry's hand also flew out of his hand and fell far to the side. Seeing this, Rowling made a prompt decision and said, "Claw card, quickly return to your original form." As he finished speaking, a dazzling magic circle instantly blossomed under Rowling's feet. At the same time, a dazzling purple energy quickly emerged from the sword of Gryffindor. These energies continuously gathered together and eventually transformed into the sword Claw card. Llewellyn sighed heavily, thinking to himself, how come these Claw cards have become so cunning nowadays? If Xiao Ke hadn't warned me in time, I would have been injured. Llewellyn patted his chest with lingering fear, with a layer of fine beads of sweat on his forehead. At the same time, Harry finally came back to his senses from his trance, but his face was still full of confusion and bewilderment. He stared at Rowling blankly, feeling as if his whole body had been hit hard by a heavy hammer. The pain was unbearable. He seemed to have lost his memory of what he had just experienced, his mind was blank, no matter how hard he tried to recall, he could not piece together the complete picture. "Rowling, thank you for coming to save me." Harry's voice was hoarse, and his eyes revealed a complex emotion of gratitude and confusion. He tried to recall what had just happened, but the memory was as vague as if it was shrouded in fog. Rowling looked at Harry with a meaningful look, and said slowly, "Harry, your mind was controlled by the sword of Gryffindor just now. It seems that this sword is too powerful for you to control, so let me keep it properly." After saying that, Rowling stepped forward, bent down, and picked up the sword of Gryffindor on the ground. However, at the moment when his fingers touched the sword, an unexpected scene happened. The sword of Gryffindor suddenly turned into a dazzling light and went straight into Rowling's body. Then, a strong feeling of joy surged into his heart like a tide, as if the sword was conveying some kind of message to Rowling. It turned out that this was the resonance and joy that the sword of Gryffindor felt from the pure Gryffindor blood flowing in Rowling's body. The thought flashed through Rowling's mind, and his right hand suddenly appeared like a magic trick, and the legendary sword of Gryffindor appeared in an instant. Wow, it's really a rare treasure! Rowling couldn't help but exclaimed, his eyes flashing with excitement and awe. At this moment, the phoenix fox soaring in the sky, its sharp and mysterious eyes actually revealed an almost human-like expression, slightly narrowed, closely watching everything happening below. Rowling and Harry rushed to Ginny's side. Harry anxiously stared at Ginny, who was still unconscious, and stretched out his fingers tremblingly, gently testing her breath. When he felt a faint breath, the heavy stone hanging in Harry's heart finally fell, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Thank God, she's still alive. The voice was so soft that only he could hear it. Rowling, why hasn't Ginny woken up yet? Harry turned to look at Rowling suspiciously, his tone full of confusion and worry. Llewellyn also walked forward quickly to check carefully, thinking secretly in his heart, and a trace of confusion appeared on his face. Logically speaking, as long as the Horcrux is destroyed in the movie, the person should wake up immediately. As he thought about it, Rowling opened the Eye of Elements, trying to see the real situation inside Ginny's body. However, what he saw shocked him. Ginny's body and soul seemed extremely unstable, and there were even signs of separation from each other.